Chapter 453. Li Qinshue's brows were tightly knitted together. She had already lost her initial patience with Su Peijian's interrogation. "If you really want to know, then let me explain." A voice that didn't belong here sounded. There was exhaustion in the elegance and helplessness in the hoarse voice. Li Qinshu looked up and saw the enemy she had been entangled with for half of her life. Su Changhui, who shouldn't be here at this moment. Her expression suddenly became even more unsightly. She crossed her arms in front of her chest, and her eyes were endless cold. What was he doing here again? He was the one who caused all the trouble and pain today. Why did he come again? Did he want to watch the show? Old Masterly didn't like Su Changhui either. However, he had lived longer than everyone present, so he was able to maintain his composure. "Dad." Su Peijian looked at him as if she had seen her savior. She walked toward Su Changhui quickly, and her eyes were already uncontrollably red. Su Changhui looked at Su Peijian with a very complicated expression. He turned his head and looked at Li Qinshu. Li Qinshu looked noble and elegant in her white dress. Even though there was obvious anger on her face, it only made her look a little more lively. She was so beautiful. Su Changhui sighed in his heart. Why had he been so blind and ignored such a wife for so many years? What was even more hateful was that when he realized this, his marriage with Li Qinshu had come to an end. His heart was a little sour. He looked at Li Qinshu with thousands of words in his eyes, but at this time, he couldn't say a word. "Dad." When Su Peijian found that Su Changhui had been ignoring her, she couldn't help but stomp her feet and call him again. "Peijian." Su Changhui looked away and at the same time suppressed the bitterness in his heart. When he saw Su Peijian's unwilling face, he felt guilty for the first time for this daughter. His mistake was really irreparable. The most important thing now was how to make up for it. "Peijian, come with me." These 6 words were filled with an indescribable sense of regret and sorrow. Su Peijian didn't want to go. At this time, she had a hunch that what Su Changhui was going to say was something she didn't want to hear. She suddenly didn't want to know. "I want to listen right here." Su Changhui's face darkened. He thought of what Xiang Kaiping had said to him. He didn't think so in the past, but today was the first time he felt that his daughter had been spoiled rotten by him. "Come with me." These 4 simple words were filled with a domineering aura that Su Peijian could not refuse. In this family, Su Peijian was least afraid of Su Changhui. Su Changhui was the one she was most afraid of. That was because Su Changhui gave people the impression that he was a gentleman who would never get angry. In fact, everyone in the family knew that when Su Changhui was really angry, no one could stand it. Su Qingsang swallowed, suppressed all the unwillingness in her heart, and followed Su Changhui. Su Changhui looked at Li Qinshu with a complicated look in his eyes. "You guys continue." After saying this, he took Su Peijian upstairs. Su Changhui left with Su Peijian. However, the relatives and friends in the family were still in a state of confusion. What the hell was going on? It wasn't just the others. Great-grandfather Li and his great-aunt were also very curious. Great-grandfather Li was a man, so it was not convenient for him to speak. His great-aunt was not polite. "Qinshu, can I ask, this Peijian, now, she is the daughter of the Su family." Li Qinshu had a faint smile on her face. She didn't want to say a word in detail. Everyone present began to ponder in their hearts. The daughter of the Su family meant more than one thing. An adopted daughter was also a daughter, an illegitimate daughter was also a daughter. The biological daughter could still be regarded as her own daughter. He just didn't know what Su Peijian was now in the Su family, other than Su Qingsang being the eldest daughter of the Su family. Su Qingsang breathed a sigh of relief when she saw Su Changhui. If it was possible, it would be much easier for Su Changhui to explain to Su Peijian. However, when she looked at Su Changhui just now, he looked even more haggard than yesterday. She looked at Li Qinshu, who was chatting with her great-aunt's family. She didn't take Su Changhui's appearance to heart at all. She sighed in her heart. It seemed that Li Qinshu had completely let it go. "Sister, are you worried?" "Are you worried?" Su Yusin stood beside her and saw that she didn't look too good. "Don't worry. Mom and I won't let anything happen to you." "I'm not worried." She shook her head. She couldn't say that she saw the way Su Changhui looked at Li Qianxue just now. She had seen that kind of look before. She knew what it meant. It was clear that Su Changhui had finally realized his feelings for her at such a time. However, when she looked at Li Qianxue again, she didn't care about Su Changhui at all. When Li Qianxue loved Su Changhui didn't love her. When Su Changhui fell in love with Li Qianxue, but Li Qianxue didn't love Su Changhui anymore. Su Qingsang suddenly felt that fate was playing tricks on people. It was such a rare thing to meet the right person at the right time. Su Yusin didn't know if she shook her head because she didn't want him to worry or if she really wasn't worried. But in fact, he was a little worried. I'm quite sad to see my sister like that. After all, they had grown up together. For so many years, he had really regarded Su Peijian as his own sister. Now that such a thing had happened to his sister, a good family had become torn apart. He felt a little sad. Qingsang Yusin, come here. Old Master Li was calling Su Qingsang. She glanced at Su Yusin. There were many things that were not suitable to say now. She patted Su Yusin on the shoulder and looked at him sincerely. Don't worry. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Some things may feel sad at the time, but one day it will all be over. Su Yusin nodded and held her hand as they walked toward Old Master Li in the study upstairs. After listening to Su Chinghui's words, Su Peijian was stunned and couldn't move. On a day in the first lunar month, the indoor central air conditioning made the study very warm. Su Peijian only felt a burst of coldness. The coldness spread from her back all the way to her heart, and then spread from her heart to her limbs. Dad! Su Peijian found her voice with great difficulty. She looked at Su Chenghui, her eyes full of disbelief. Are you kidding? You must be joking with me, right? Su Chenghui didn't want to hurt Su Peijian. He was also very sad to see his daughter like this. Loving Su Peijian had become a habit. If possible, he didn't want to hurt her. Peijian, I'm sorry. Su Chinghui's words were light, but to Su Peijian, it was like a bolt from the blue. Her body trembled slightly. She looked at Su Chenghui, refusing to accept this fact. Impossible. It's impossible. You lied to me. Why did you lie to me? She suddenly stepped forward and grabbed Su Chinghui's clothes. Her eyes were red. Tears gathered in the corners of her eyes. Dad, you lied to me, right? How could Su Qingsang be my daughter? How could I be that woman's child? This is impossible. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. She was very emotional. This news had really subverted her understanding. She refused to accept this fact. Peijian, Su Chenghui was speechless. It's true. If you don't believe it, you can do a paternity test. In fact, Hua Jinyao has already done a paternity test. I don't believe it. Su Peijian suddenly let go of his clothes, took a step back, and shouted at Su Changhui. I don't believe it. I don't care. I'm the daughter of the Su family. I'm my mother's daughter. She seemed to think of something. She suddenly looked up at Su Chenghui. It's because of Hua Jinyao, isn't it? Yes, it's because of Hua Jinyao. Su Peijian felt that she had guessed correctly. It was because of Hua Jinyao. Because he is the CEO of Tianyu Group? Because Su Qingsang is married to him? So you think Su Qingsang is more useful to you, right? Is that right? Peijian. Su Chenghui couldn't listen anymore. What nonsense are you talking about? Isn't it? Su Peijian refused to believe Su Chenghui's words. Why did you take revenge now? Also, how did Mom know? She felt that this was the key point. Didn't you want to take revenge on Mom? If that's the case, why did you tell Mom? Why didn't you keep this secret in your heart for the rest of your life? Why? Su Peijian's whole body was weak. She fell to the ground. She couldn't face the fact that she wasn't Li Qianxue. If her identity was swapped with Su Qingsang's, didn't that mean that she was the illegitimate daughter? How could she be an illegitimate daughter? She didn't want to be an illegitimate daughter. She was the real daughter of the Su family. Su Chenghui looked at Su Peijian. He knew that it was hard for her to accept this fact. But the truth was the truth. It wouldn't change whether she accepted it or not. Peijian, get up. I'll take you down. Dad? Su Peijian looked up at him. You're going to tell them that what my mother said just now was all false. Is that so? No. Su Chenghui shook his head. He had already made a mistake, so he would try to make up for it. I'm going to take you to your real mother. Real mother? Who? The old woman who slapped her in the face? Su Peijian couldn't stop shaking her head. The tears that had gathered in her eyes finally fell. When Su Chenghui approached, she hugged his leg. Her voice was even more pitiful than before, and it was even more unbearable. Chapter 454. Her voice was sobbing, but the meaning she wanted to express was quite clear. Su Chenghui smiled bitterly. Look, even his daughter knew that Li Qianxue loved him very much, and so did he. However, he relied on her love for him and then squandered it endlessly. In the end, when his love was squandered, his lover was also gone. Dad, just promise me, please. I beg you. I don't want to be someone else's daughter. I only recognize my mother. I have lived with her for more than 20 years. I know that she loves me the most. You also love me the most. I did do something wrong in the past, but you're my parents. You can forgive me. Is that all right? I beg you. I promise I will be obedient in the future. I promise I will never make you angry again. Dad, you can go and tell my mom about it. I beg of you. If you tell her, she will definitely agree. Really? As she spoke, tears streamed down her cheeks like a pear blossom in the rain. Su Chenghui couldn't bear it anymore. However, no matter how much he couldn't bear it, it couldn't compare to his regret at this time. He had already been wrong, and he wouldn't be wrong again. Su Chenghui reached out to pull Su Peijian. She hugged his leg so tightly that at first he couldn't pull her hand away smoothly. In the end, he made up his mind. He gritted his teeth and pulled Su Peijian's body up and straightened her body. Peijian, calm down. Calm down and listen to me. I won't listen. I don't want to listen. I don't want to listen to a word. I don't want to believe it either. I don't want to believe you. Liar, they were all liars. They were all lying to her. Dad, don't you love me the most? You love me so much. How can you bear to let me be an illegitimate daughter? I don't want it. Su Chenghui's expression didn't look good. He did love Su Peijian the most. However, he didn't expect Su Peijian's attitude to be so fierce. And such a fierce attitude was actually because she didn't want to be an illegitimate daughter. Su Peijian. His tone became cold. This matter has no room for you to interfere. Dad. Su Peijian looked at him blankly, unwilling to accept it. It's useless if you don't accept it. Su Chenghui let out a long sigh. In the past, I let Qianxue and Qingsang down. The past is already a mistake. Now, I don't want to continue this mistake. Especially when he realized what was most important to him. Su Peijian kept shaking her head. She refused to accept it. Suddenly, she pushed Su Chenghui hard. I don't accept it. If he did not accept it now, he would not accept it in the future. I will never accept it. She took a step back, turned around, and ran out the door. Su Chenghui didn't expect Su Peijian to push him. He took 2 steps back. Before he could react, Su Peijian had already run out of the room. In a hurry, he quickly followed them. Downstairs, Su Qingsang recognized almost all the relatives who came. There seemed to be a lot of people, but Su Qingsang had met many of them before. He knew a little about it. Great-grandfather Li had 2 sons and a daughter. My great-aunt had 2 daughters and a son. These people were her elders. As for great-grandfather Li's grandchildren and great-aunt's grandchildren, they were the same generation as her. There was nothing much to say about the elders. After greeting them and accepting their gifts, that was it. As for those who didn't bring gifts, it didn't matter. Most of these people relied on the Li family to survive. They all said that they would make up for the gifts later. Of course, the important thing was not the gifts, but the recognition of Su Qingsang's identity. With Li Qianxue and Old Master Li's support today, Su Qingsang would be the real daughter of the Su family in the future. No one could look down on her. After recognizing her, the elders gathered together to talk. A few of the younger generation came to Su Qingsang and surrounded her to talk to her. In fact, among these people, 2 were Old Master Li's granddaughters, and 1 was the granddaughter of her great-aunt. These people used to have a good relationship with Li Qianxue. Although they didn't bully Su Qingsang, they often followed Su Peijian and mocked Su Qingsang. Now, Su Qingsang's identity had changed greatly. They also knew what good things she had done in the past. Now, he was rushing to curry favor with her. Qingsang, The person who spoke was the third granddaughter of Old Master Li. Her name was Li Yishan. She was one of the people who looked down on Su Qingsang the most in the past. Well, I've never been a good person with words. If I offended you in the past, please don't take it to heart. Why would I? Su Qingsang smiled. She really didn't care about these things. They're all small things. I knew Qingsang was easy to talk to. Li Yishan smiled and looked at the two people next to her. Li Zhirong, who used to despise Su Qingsang, chimed in. Yeah, you can tell by looking at Su Qingsang's physiognomy. She's a magnanimous person. Qingsang. Bai Jinlan was the granddaughter of her great-aunt. Because she was the youngest, she was usually very spoiled at home. But now that she saw Su Qingsang, she knew that her family was not as good as the Li family. Naturally, her attitude was quite friendly. What does Qingsang like to play? Let's play together next time. Su Qingsang had laughed all day today. Her face was stiff. I don't usually play. There are a lot of things to do in the hospital. I'm usually busy. All right, Qingsang is a doctor. That's amazing. Bai Jinlan's other sister, Bai Yiru, said, next time we go to your hospital for a physical examination, can you give us a number in advance? Su Qingsang didn't know how to respond. I'm no longer working at the first hospital of Lin City. It might not be very convenient. You're not a doctor anymore? Li Yishan looked at Su Qingsang. Is it because you plan to enter the Li Corporation in the future? Hearing her question, the others looked at each other and waited for Su Qingsang's answer. If Su Qingsang entered the Li Corporation, there would be more cooperation in the future. This information was very important to the family. No, Su Qingsang was a little helpless. I might have to go to Rong City. As soon as she said that, the others remembered. Su Qingsang's husband was the president of Tianyu Group, and the headquarters of Tianyu Group was in Rong City. Qingsang, you're so lucky. Another granddaughter of her great-aunt couldn't help but say, I heard that Tianyu Group is one of the top companies in the country. The most important thing is that President Hua loves Qingsang very much. The one who spoke was Li Zhirong. She was also brought to Hua Jinyao's banquet last time. To be honest, she couldn't help but envy Su Qingsang's good life. Look, the man she married was the president of Tianyu Group. Suddenly, she became the daughter of the Su family. It didn't matter how she did it, but she did it. As she said this, the others also began to flatter Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang was really not used to this kind of conversation. She was thinking of finding an excuse to leave this group of people. On the other side, Su Peijian had already reached the door of the living room. As soon as Su Peijian entered the living room, she saw this scene. Those friends who usually surrounded her and were good friends with her were all around Su Qingsang now. Even through the crowd, she could clearly see the flattering faces of those people. These people were obviously different before, but now they had changed their attitude. Was it because Su Qingsang became the daughter of the Su family? Was it because Su Qingsang changed her identity? And this identity clearly belonged to her. If Su Peijian still had a trace of rationality before, now she was completely stimulated by the scene in front of her. She suddenly rushed in. She didn't look at Su Qingsang, but directly walked past the crowd to Li Qianxue. Mom. Li Qianxue was talking about some company matters with her two cousins. Since she had already decided to divorce Su Changhui, she had to make preparations. After the divorce, Su Changhui might not necessarily work at the Li Corporation again. Moreover, even if he wanted to stay at the Li Corporation, Li Qianxue wouldn't want to. She hated Su Changhui now when she thought of him. She had thought very clearly that Su Changhui couldn't be relied on in the future. Then she must add new people to replace Su Changhui's work in the company. Just as she was engrossed in the conversation, a familiar voice interrupted her. Turning around, she saw Su Peijian's pale face. It was obvious that she had cried. Her expression was a little serious. Peijian, why are you here? Have you rested well? This sentence had two meanings. Did Su Changhui tell you clearly? Since you know, why are you still here? I don't need to rest. Su Peijian used to be a smart person, but now her intelligence was gone without a trace. Her reason was also gone. All that was left was anger and pain for her lost identity. Mom, Dad, I lied to you, didn't I? I'm your daughter, right? Her voice was pleading. Li Qianxue had a mother-daughter relationship with her for more than 20 years. Now seeing her like this, she felt a little suffocated. She hated Su Chenghui more and more in her heart, but her face didn't change. You are the daughter of the Su family. Don't worry, this will not change. What she said was the last thing she could give Su Peijian. Su Peijian was still the daughter of the Su family. She was also willing to give her a decent life for the sake of the fact that she had raised her for more than 20 years. But a fake was a fake. Since Su Peijian wasn't her daughter, she naturally wouldn't give her what didn't belong to her. Li Qianxue didn't think she was going too far. In fact, when she thought of Su Qingsang being wronged for so many years. As Xiang Caiping's daughter, Su Peijian had always enjoyed the benefits of her status and the title of the eldest daughter of the Su family. Her heart couldn't be softened anymore. With Su Chenghui, she could divorce or fight with her. But with Su Peijian, she was still willing to owe her a little. It's not the same. Su Peijian almost immediately understood the difference. Mom, it's not the same. She looked at Li Qianxue and grabbed her arm. Mom, not only do I want to be the daughter of the Su family, but I also want to be your daughter. I am your daughter. You raised me for more than 20 years. Isn't that right? Chapter 455. Su Peijian's tears began to gather again. In fact, she used to be arrogant and rarely cried. But today, she had the urge to cry again and again. Her hand gripped Li Qianxue's arm tightly, almost leaving a mark on Li Qianxue's arm. Li Qianxue looked at Su Peijian and felt sorry for her again. But when she saw Su Chenghui, who also appeared in the living room, it disappeared without a trace. I told you, you will still be the daughter of the Su family. I don't want it. Su Peijian shook her head and heard the coldness in Li Qianxue's words. Mom, you really don't want me? I am Peijian. Don't you love me the most? Mom. After seeing Su Chenghui, Li Qianxue waved her hand away. She felt a little uncomfortable in her heart. She glared at Su Chenghui, and the hatred in her eyes deepened. I'm not your mother, she said coldly. She admitted that she was venting her anger on him. She couldn't do anything to Su Chenghui, but she could vent her anger on his precious daughter, right? You are not my daughter, and I am not your mother. Seeing Su Peijian's hurt face, Li Qianxue forced herself to turn her face away. Go back to your room and rest. There are many guests here now. Don't be rude. Don't be rude? Su Peijian looked at Li Qianxue in shock. What did she mean by don't be rude? Was she not the daughter of this family? Was she not even qualified to stay with these relatives after she was not Li Qianxue's daughter? She suddenly remembered. In the past years, as the illegitimate daughter of the Su family, what did Su Qingsang do? She shook her head hard. She refused to accept that one day she would do that. She didn't show up when there were guests in the house. She was like a shadow. She didn't want it. Mom, Peijian. Su Chenghui came over. He took Su Peijian's hand and wanted to take her away. Let's go out first. I don't want to. Su Peijian waved his hand away. I don't want to go out. Why should I go out? I'm also a daughter of the Su family. She glanced at Li Qianxue and said, Mom just admitted that I'm also a daughter of the Su family. Since I'm the daughter of the Su family, why should I go out? Su Chenghui's face darkened. Su Peijian's behavior gave him a headache. Peijian, come with me. I'm not leaving. Su Peijian turned around and looked at Li Qianxue. Are you really going to do this to me? Do you really not want me anymore? Are you really not going to acknowledge me as your daughter? Li Qianxue was originally willing to protect Su Peijian's dignity, but now she really didn't like her aggressiveness. In addition, Su Chenghui was still next to her. With both sides provoked, Li Qianxue spoke without thinking. Yes, I don't want you anymore. You are not my daughter either. She glared at Su Chenghui with obvious provocation in her eyes. Now my daughter is Su Qingsang. She is my daughter. Su Peijian's face was pale, and her whole body was shaking like an autumn leaf in the wind. Su Chenghui couldn't bear it. When he met Li Qianxue's eyes, he knew that she was venting her anger on him. He smiled bitterly in his heart and stepped forward to hold Su Peijian's shoulder. Peijian, let's go. It was time for him to take Su Peijian to Xiang Caiping. Even if Xiang Caiping's attitude was just as sharp and she refused to acknowledge it. But after all, They were mother and daughter. After spending some time together, there would be feelings. Don't touch me. Su Peijian stood to the side, avoiding Su Chenghui's hand and also standing opposite Su Chenghui and Li Qianxue. Li Qianxue had been standing to the side when she was chatting with others. After all, her daughter was the main character today. She hoped that Su Qingsang could get more attention. But this way, Su Peijian could clearly see the other people in the living room from this angle. Old Master Li was looking in her direction, his brows tightly knitted, and his face looked dissatisfied with her. Su Yusin, who was next to him, looked at her with a look of wanting to say something, but his eyes were also clearly looking forward to her leaving as soon as possible. Finally, it was Su Qingsang. She was still surrounded by those people. She was also looking at her. Her eyes were calm, and there was no emotion in them. But Su Peijian saw sympathy and pity in her eyes. That kind of emotion was something she could not tolerate. Who was Su Qingsang? Since when did she, Su Peijian, deserve sympathy? Why did she have to look at her like that? How could she treat her with such a condescending attitude? Su Peijian could not accept it. She glared back at Su Qingsang. Did she really think that her identity could decide everything? In her dreams. Let them wait and see. She wanted to see who would be the one laughing at the end. Peijian. Su Chenghui noticed Su Peijian's gaze, and his expression became complicated. Li Qianxue also saw the expression on her face. For the past 25 years, Li Qianxue had treated Su Peijian so well. Now, she felt as guilty as Su Qingsang. She suddenly saw her adopted daughter looking at Su Qingsang with such hatred, and she could not stand it. Peijian, stop it. Go back to your room first. Her voice was a little cold. To Li Qianxue, Su Qingsang was the daughter she owed for more than 20 years. What happened in the past was in the past. She could not take it back, but she would never allow anyone to bully Su Qingsang in the future. Even if that person was Su Peijian, whom she had raised. Her voice was full of warning. When it fell into Su Peijian's ears, it only made it more unacceptable. I'm making a scene? She wanted everything that originally belonged to her. How did she become the one making a scene? Can I make a scene? She pointed at Su Qingsang. You didn't say anything, and you changed my identity. I can't even ask. I can't even protest, can I? She could only accept this unfair fate, couldn't she? Su Peijian. Li Qianxue could not listen to it anymore. Watch your words. Look at the situation. Your father has already told you what you want to ask. I've also told you the answer you want to know. You're not calm now. It's better for you to leave. She tried to lower her voice so that more people would not hear her. Unfortunately, Su Peijian did not appreciate it. I'm not calm. Su Peijian nodded heavily. Good, 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 very good. Anyway, it's all my fault now. It's all my fault. Okay. She looked around at the people in front of her. Her family, her relatives, and her parents, whom she loved the most. She kept nodding and looking at these people. Finally, she stomped her feet, turned around, and ran away without looking back. She moved so fast that Su Chenghui did not have time to stop her. She ran away. Su Chenghui frowned. He was about to chase after her when he met the corner of Li Qianxue's lips and sharp eyes. Chapter 456. Meeting Su Chenghui's gaze, Li Qianxue took a step forward and stood in front of him. Peijian is a little stubborn. You'd better go and comfort her. Some things were already set in stone, so he could only accept it. There was nothing he could do if he didn't accept it. Su Chenghui was silent. As soon as he turned around, he heard Li Qianxue's voice behind him. Su Chenghui, is this what you want? Is this what you want to see? Are you satisfied now that you've seen it? He had single-handedly carried out his revenge. Now, was he happy? Was he proud? Su Chenghui's body trembled, as if all his strength had been sucked out. He didn't look back, and his back was stiff. Li Qianxue, who was behind him, obviously didn't intend to let him go. Su Chenghui, I really want to kill you. When she said this, there was even a smile on her face. People who didn't know what was going on would think that the two of them were talking about the child. Only they knew that what they were talking about had nothing to do with the child at all. Her voice was cold, and the hatred in it made Su Chenghui's heart feel as if it was being squeezed. He resisted the urge to turn around and chased after Su Peijian without looking back. It was just that from the back, it looked like he was running away in a panic. Li Qianxue didn't care about Su Chenghui. She turned around and smiled again. It was a holiday. It was another good day for Su Qingsang. She didn't want someone like Su Chenghui to affect her mood. Su Qingsang didn't say anything. She watched Su Peijian run out just like that, and she didn't know how to feel. At this moment, she really sympathized with Su Peijian. Li Zhirong and Li Yishan looked at her as if they wanted to say something. Su Qingsang smiled at them and found an excuse to go to Li Qianxue's side. Mom, Li Qianxue's attitude was very tough just now, so she was probably still feeling bad. Are you okay? I'm fine. What could have happened to me? Li Qianxue's expression was calm. In fact, she didn't really dislike Su Peijian that much. But as long as she thought that she was Su Chenghui and Xiang Caiping's daughter, she would panic. Not to mention the fact that Su Chenghui had swapped Su Qingsang's identity with hers in order to let Su Peijian live like the daughter of a wealthy family. As soon as she thought of this, Li Qianxue felt as if there was a fire burning in her heart. That fire burned until she lost all rationality. If Su Peijian was hurt because of her attitude today, she couldn't blame her. Su Chenghui was to blame. She took a deep breath and held Su Qingsang's arm. I'm fine, but you, in the future, you must always remember your identity. If someone doesn't have eyes and provokes you, you will be punished. You don't have to be polite, just teach them a lesson. If there's anything, Mom will take care of it for you. Mom. Su Qingsang finally understood where Su Peijian's arrogance came from. Who would provoke me for no reason? You think too much. I'm telling you. Which normal person would mess with Su Qingsang? He was afraid that some people would be blind. Li Qianxue recalled the look in Su Peijian's eyes when she left. She couldn't tell what she was feeling. She patted the back of Su Qingsang's hand and said, "Speaking of which, I shouldn't have said that to you. But today's situation, I think you saw it. I'm afraid Peijian won't want to let go. If she makes things difficult for you, you don't have to worry. You could do whatever you want." Mom, I know. Su Qingsang smiled at her and comforted her. You don't have to think too much. I think Peijian just can't get over it. She'll get better in the future. I hope so. After all, she had raised her for more than 20 years. Li Qianxue didn't want to think too badly of Su Peijian. It was okay if she just couldn't get over it. She was afraid that if she couldn't get over it, she would get herself into trouble, or she would do something else. She looked at Su Qingsang and wanted to remind her, but thinking that Su Qingsang would soon return to Rong City, she gave up. In any case, the two of them wouldn't have many opportunities to meet in the future. Some things didn't need to be said. When Su Qingsang left Rong City, when she recovered from the shock of her child being stolen, she should be able to face Su Peijian normally. Although there were some twists and turns on this day, Su Qingsang's identity was announced to her relatives and friends. When seeing the guests off, Li Qianxue still cared about Su Peijian. She explained it to those relatives. Su Peijian would still be the daughter of the Su family in the future. Today's incident would be treated as a small interlude. To be able to survive in this circle, how many of them were stupid? She also understood. Li Qianxue still had motherly feelings for Su Peijian. Su Peijian was still the daughter of the Su family. The necessary respect and dignity would still be given to her. Li Qianxue saw the last relative off and returned to the living room. She found old Master Li sitting on the sofa, looking like he was waiting for her. Where's Qingsang? Asked her to go upstairs to rest. Old Master Li gestured for Li Qianxue to sit on the sofa before he slowly said, "What do you plan to do about Peijian?" Today, Li Qianxue wasn't the only one who saw the resentment in Su Peijian's eyes before she left. Old Master Li also saw it. The old man naturally thought more than Li Qianxue. For so many years, Su Peijian had occupied Su Peijian's position. She had enjoyed what she wanted, and she had gotten what she wanted. In terms of the assets under her name, Su Peijian was much more than Su Peijian. She had her own house at the age of 16, and the gifts Li Qianxue gave her at the age of 18 were all businesses that made money. When she was 20, Li Qianxue bought her a villa. Although the villa couldn't compare to this big house, it was still very valuable. There were also birthday gifts from Old Master Li, gifts from Su Chenghui every year, cars under her name, and some other investments in financial management. It could be said that Su Peijian had many assets under her name. However, since these things were given to her, Li Qianxue didn't plan to take them back. Old Master Li had wanted to give Su Peijian another dowry, but seeing Su Peijian's behavior today, he was a little worried. Although what Chenghui did has nothing to do with Peijian, but you saw how she was just now. People who were not content were like snakes trying to swallow an elephant. He was afraid that what they thought was enough, Su Peijian didn't think it was enough. Dad, I know what I'm doing. If Su Peijian could recognize her identity and know her place, it would be good for everyone. If she didn't know her place and insisted on going against Su Qingsang, he was afraid that it wouldn't be so easy. It's good that you know what you're doing. Old Master Li also had feelings for Su Peijian. However, these feelings couldn't suppress the emotions of being deceived by Su Chenghui, and they couldn't suppress the anger of his daughter being bullied. Although Old Master Li gave Su Chenghui some pressure because Li Qianxue was pregnant and made him marry Li Qianxue. But if Su Chenghui really didn't want to, he could refuse. It wasn't that the Li family couldn't afford to raise a child. If he didn't agree, they couldn't tie him up and bring him to the hall. But Su Chenghui was different. He said one thing on the surface and another behind her back. He agreed to marry Li Qianxue in front of her, but behind her back, he used such a vicious method to hurt his daughter. As soon as Old Master Li thought of this, he was like Li Qianxue. No matter how much he loved Su Peijian, it couldn't offset his anger. Perhaps realizing that his tone was not very good, Old Master Li sighed. When Qingsang goes to Rong City, you don't have to stop her if she wants to come back and live there. Since the family allowed Qingsang to stay, we naturally won't kick her out. With her identity as the daughter of the Su family, even if Su Peijian were to get married in the future, Su Peijian would not be able to get married. It didn't have much of an impact. They were just afraid that she wouldn't appreciate it. At that time, as her elders, they would all be thinking for nothing. Li Qianxue didn't say anything. She thought so too. Upstairs, Su Qingsang was exhausted. She changed her clothes, picked up her phone, and called Hu Jinyao. Honey. Hu Jinyao answered the phone very quickly. Su Qingsang could vaguely hear voices on the other end of the phone. It should be the whole family. Are you home? Yes. Hu Jinyao nodded, stood up, and walked towards a hallway with his phone in his hand. I'm at home. Great uncle and great aunt are here today. How could Su Qingsang not know that it was the Lantern Festival today? Say hello to Grandpa for me. She wanted to say that she would go to Rong City in 2 days, but she didn't say it. She decided to give Hu Jinyao a surprise. Don't worry, Grandpa knows. You only know how to coax me. I'm afraid that Grandpa is still very angry. Even when Manzi jumped out to criticize her, she was afraid that the elders of the Hu family would have an even worse opinion of her. Look at you. You're thinking nonsense again, aren't you? I said it's fine, so it's fine. Just stay there and keep your mother company. Hu Jinyao. Su Qingsang nodded, but suddenly called his name. What's wrong? I miss you. On the other end of the phone, Hu Jinyao curled his lips. Since you miss me, stay with your mother for a few more days and come quickly. Use your actions to prove what you think of me. Hooligan. Su Qingsang bit her lip and muttered, Okay. After hanging up the phone, Su Qingsang's face was a little hot. She patted her cheeks to cool it down. She threw down her phone and lay down on the bed. She was thinking about whether she should book a plane ticket back the day after tomorrow. Tomorrow, she would pack up and buy some gifts for old Master Hua and the others. Thinking of gifts, Su Qingsang remembered the one she bought last time. They were still in Hua Jinyao's villa. Should she go and get them tomorrow? Before that, she should say hello to Li Qianxue first. After all, she said that she would go to Rong City with her. While Su Qingsang was thinking about going to Rong City, Su Peijian couldn't let Su Chenghui catch up with her. After leaving the Su family, she got in her car. She drove as fast as she could, but in the end, she found that she had nowhere to go. The Su family was her home, but now she couldn't go back to the Su family. Her home was occupied by Su Qingsang. She could go back to her apartment, but it was cold and she was the only one there. She didn't want to go back. Chapter 457. Thinking of Su Changhui saying that he would take her to the old woman who had beaten her, Su Peijian became angrier. Finally, she turned the steering wheel and drove to a high-end club she used to go to. As soon as she entered, she asked someone to bring a lot of wine. She was in a bad mood and wanted a drink. She came here so often that the waiters knew her. All kinds of high-end wine, which cost tens of thousands of yuan, filled the table. Su Peijian opened one of the bottles and gulped it down. She drank so fast that she choked. She coughed twice and continued drinking. She quickly drank more than half of the bottle. Su Peijian felt that it wasn't enough, so she drank the rest and opened a second bottle. She was the only one in the room. She often came to this club, so she wasn't worried about anything happening. After drinking 2 or 3 bottles of wine in a row, even Su Peijian was drunk. She fell directly on the sofa and fell asleep just like that. When she was in a daze, Su Peijian felt that she wanted to go to the bathroom. There was one in the room, but she was drunk and went outside the room. She came back from the bathroom and was about to go back to her room, but when she passed by a room, she heard Hu Jinyao's name. Hu Jinyao is really too much. He bullies people like this just because Tianyu Group is now powerful. He's simply despicable. That voice was very familiar, as if she had heard it somewhere before. Su Peijian was drunk and tried hard to remember where she had heard this voice before. He's bullying people. What can you do? I hate that we're being bullied like this now. This voice was also very familiar. Su Peijian blinked and thought about where she had heard this voice before. Isn't it? Do you know that I really hate him now? But my parents won't let me settle the score with Hu Jinyao. Come on. The person's voice was full of mockery. So what if you really come to him? That's Hu Jinyao. He's not an ordinary cat or dog. Yes, Hu Jinyao is not easy to deal with. Look, Junjio offended Hu Jinyao and even gave up the cooperation to the Li Corporation. This was another person's voice. As soon as this sentence came out, there was no more sound. Su Peijian couldn't bear to listen any longer. With a bang sound, she pushed open the door of the private room forcefully. What happened to Hu Jinyao? What happened to Hu Jinyao? You can deal with him if you want. No matter how powerful he is, does he have 3 heads and 6 arms? Peijian. A few people were talking inside. Everyone turned to look at the door. Su Peijian glanced around. Even though she was drunk, she could still recognize the people in front of her. Luo Meishan's brother, Luo Haonan, Song Yua's brother, Song Yangjia, and Wu Ran, who was like their tail. All that was left was Qiu Yanba and Chang Qiuhai, and the rest of them would be gathered. The ones who spoke just now were Luo Haonan and Song Yangjia. Their mothers had an argument with Xiang Kaiping, which led Hu Jinyao to deal with their families personally. Both Xinghua Department Store and Kasong Electronics had become subsidiaries of Tianyu Group. Because of this, Luo Haonan and Song Yangjia became a joke in their circle. Madame Song and Madame Luo were almost chased out of the house by their husbands. For many days, the two families didn't go out. They were too ashamed to raise their heads. Su Peijian thought of this when she saw them. Speaking of which, she was sent away by Su Changhui because of this. If she hadn't been sent away by Su Changhui, Su Qingsong's identity probably wouldn't have been exposed so quickly. Thinking of this, Su Peijian was furious. She gritted her teeth. She was angry at Su Qingsong and hated Hu Jinyao. What's so difficult about dealing with Hu Jinyao? If you have the ability to complain, why don't you take some action? Luo Haonan and Song Yangjia didn't respond. In fact, it was Madame Song and Madame Luo who caused Xiang Caiping's accident. However, if it wasn't for the fact that they wanted to please Su Peijian and help her, why would they do such a thankless thing? In the end, when the problem arose, no one stood up for the Luo and Song families. It wasn't that Madame Luo and Madame Song didn't think of going to Li Qianxue. However, Su Peijian had been sent away. How could Li Qianxue be in the mood to deal with them? Moreover, the person who did it was Hu Jinyao. He didn't even give face to Su Changhui, let alone others. Now that they saw Su Peijian, the two of them didn't look happy. Su Peijian had drunk some wine and was tipsy. She sneered and said, "What? Are you blaming me now?" Luo Haonan and Song Yangjia didn't answer. but the expressions on their faces revealed that they meant it. Blame me? Why would you blame me? I was sent abroad by my father because of this. Now my mother doesn't recognize me. I finally see it. What kinship? It's all fake. Only benefits are real. As for Li Qinxue and Su Chenghui's excuses about the wrong baby and revenge, it was all nonsense. No matter what, they had raised her for more than 20 years. Did they not have any feelings for her at all? People said that giving birth was not as important as raising. Why was it that when it came to Li Qinxue and Old Master Li, giving birth was not as important as giving birth? To put it bluntly, it was because Su Qingsang married Hu Jinyao. Hu Jinyao was the president of Tianya Group, which had a partnership with the Li Group. He took advantage of his identity to bully her again and again. No one would be able to take this insult. Luo Haonan and Song Yangjia couldn't help but look at her when she said this. Thinking that she, a daughter of a rich family, had been sent abroad by the Su family, they felt a little soft-hearted, especially Luo Haonan, who liked Su Peijian. In his memory, Su Peijian had always been beautiful and flamboyant. When had he ever seen Su Peijian look so down and down? Wu Ran stood up and looked at Su Peijian. Since you're saying that, do you have a good idea? Su Peijian looked at Wu Ran, then at Luo Haonan and Song Yangjia. Suddenly, she smiled and said, I do have an idea, but whether it's good or not, you can listen to it. She closed the door, walked into the room step by step, and looked at the people in front of her. Can you think of a way to deal with Wu Jinyao? Song Yangjia was the first to not believe it. Your family has a lot of projects with Tianya Group now, right? Aren't you afraid that your parents will be angry with you if you deal with Wu Jinyao? When did I say that I'm going to deal with Wu Jinyao directly? Su Peijian looked at the three of them with cold eyes. We can't deal with Wu Jinyao in a short time. After all, he has Tianya Group behind him. But I know what Wu Jinyao's weakness is. It's not easy for you to deal with Wu Jinyao, but it's not difficult to deal with his weakness. Wu Ran narrowed his eyes and looked at Su Peijian's angry face. Are you talking about your family's illegitimate daughter? Yes. Su Peijian gritted her teeth, and her eyes were even fiercer than before. I'm talking about the illegitimate daughter who can't be shown in public. At the end of this sentence, the three men actually felt a chill slowly rising from their backs. Su Yusin had to report to school the next day. He was already a senior in high school. Although he didn't care about the heavy homework, he still needed someone to watch over the Su family. Therefore, after discussing with the family, they decided to stick to the original plan. Old Master Li went to Rong City with Li Qinxue and Su Qingsang. Su Yusin stayed behind to watch over the family. As for the Li Corporation, Li Qinxue planned to give up her power and let the managers of the departments under her take on some heavy responsibilities. These people were the company's elders and were very loyal to the company. Even if they weren't as capable as Su Chenghui, some things could be communicated a few times. As for Su Chenghui, Li Qinxue didn't forget to call Lawyer Chun and ask him to be in charge of Su Chenghui's signing. What she didn't expect was that Su Chenghui still didn't answer. This made Li Qinxue furious. She felt that Su Chenghui was too shameless. Why didn't he sign? Su Chenghui, what do you want? Do you really think that I don't dare to reveal Su Peijian's identity? Li Qinxue and the others had already booked tickets to Rong City tomorrow. She hoped to end things with Su Chenghui before she left. Qinxue, Su Chenghui's voice sounded tired. Peijian is missing. Li Qinxue was stunned for a moment and suddenly sneered. Didn't you chase after her yesterday? How could she be missing? Su Chenghui couldn't explain it. He had always been mature and prudent. He wouldn't do something like driving fast on the road. His drivers were all the same. However, Su Peijian's car was much faster. I looked everywhere, but I couldn't find her. Her phone was also turned off. I'm very worried about her now. Li Qinxue couldn't say the harsh words that came out of her mouth. After all, Su Peijian had been raised by her for more than 20 years. If you have time, why don't you ask her friends? Someone will know. I know who you're talking about. I looked for them yesterday, and they all said that they didn't see her. Li Qinxue's heart was stifled, and her tone became unpleasant. So what? Are you still thinking that I should care about her, like I cared about Peijian in the past? Do you want me to look for her now? I didn't mean that. Then what do you mean? Why won't you sign? Li Qianxue became even angrier when she thought of this. Do you think that if you say that Peijian is missing, I will forget that I want to divorce you? Let me tell you, it's impossible. Her tone was too firm, and Su Chenghui felt bitter in his heart. Qianxue, I said it. I don't want a divorce. All right, then. Li Qianxue was also annoyed by his repeated words. If that's the case, then I'll hold another party tomorrow. I'll invite all the famous people in Lin City. I want to restore Qing Song's identity as the legitimate daughter of the Su family openly. Su Chenghui thought about Su Peijian's reaction yesterday. He knew that if Li Qianxue really did that, Su Peijian would be the first to fall. Chapter 458. To sign or not to sign made Su Chenghui struggle and struggle. He couldn't make such a choice in such a short time. He couldn't bear to let Su Peijian fall into such a situation. To Su Peijian, that was worse than taking her life. But Li Qianxue, how could he bear to leave Li Qianxue? He knew Li Qianxue's personality too well. As long as he signed the contract, there would probably be no chance between the two of them. Thinking of how Li Qianxue looked when he saw her yesterday, Su Chenghui's heart was bleeding. He closed his eyes and said weakly, Qianxue, do we really have to go this far? Su Chenghui, don't you think it's ridiculous for you to say this? Li Qianxue almost laughed out of anger at Su Chenghui. Don't you know what you've done? Do you really think that after you used such a vicious method to deal with me, I can still be with you as if nothing happened? Do you really think that after you let Peijian be my mother and daughter for more than 20 years, I will turn a blind eye? Will I be willing to acknowledge her as my biological daughter? If she had accidentally mistaken Su Peijian, she might have been willing to tolerate it. She would have continued to treat Su Peijian as her own daughter and raised her by her side. But what was the reality? The mother-daughter relationship between her and Su Peijian was orchestrated by Su Chenghui. How could she tolerate it? No matter how much Li Qianxue loved Su Peijian, it couldn't compare to the pain of being cheated and hurt, especially when such deception and hurt came from the man she loved the most. She hated him as much as she loved him at the time. This hatred reached its peak when she thought of the grievances Su Qingsang had suffered for so many years, as well as the fact that she was almost sent to an orphanage when she was born. Su Chenghui, let me tell you, I really want to drink your blood and eat your flesh. Don't think that I don't know about your dirty thoughts. Listen, I've written it clearly in the agreement, and I've given you everything I can. If you still want to push your luck or have other thoughts, I won't let you succeed. Qianxue, I didn't. I'm not. Su Chenghui couldn't defend himself. He knew that he had lost his credibility in front of Li Qianxue. I don't want to sign it because I don't want to divorce you. Qianxue, believe me, my feelings for you are sincere. Believe that you are sincere to me. I believe that you didn't care about me for more than 20 years, and on the day of the divorce, you realized that you couldn't live without me? When he said that, even Su Chenghui felt that it was ridiculous, not to mention Li Qianxue. But it was true. How could Li Qianxue believe him? She sneered. He snorted heavily. Yes, I believe you. Do you think I'll believe you so that you won't leave, so that I can get more benefits and fight for more benefits for Su Peijian? Li Qianxue gritted her teeth. She had no idea that Su Chenghui could be so shameless. I don't want to waste time with you. I want to see your signature before tonight. Otherwise, we'll just wait and see. After hanging up the phone, Li Qianxue still felt very angry. He patted his chest with all his might, suppressing his anger. But it was very difficult. If it weren't for her strong personality, she would have cried at this moment. Li Qianxue, look at you. You were really blind back then. What kind of man did you like? She had thought that even if Su Chenghui's family background was ordinary, he wouldn't love her. But in the end, he had some pride and backbone. Now it seemed that he didn't have any backbone or pride. For the sake of a little property, he could even tell such a shameless lie as if it were true. No, perhaps he had pride and backbone in the beginning. However, these 20 years of living a comfortable life made his life more and more smooth, and he became more and more spineless. Su Chenghui, you bastard. You plotted against me like this. I won't let this go. Li Qianxue's eyes were red. She really couldn't swallow the anger in her heart. She thought that she had originally planned to save some face for Su Chenghui. Since he was so shameless, why should she have any scruples? She took out her phone and was about to make a call. Before she could press the number, Su Qingsang knocked on the door and came in. Mom. Seeing her daughter, Li Qianxue put down her phone. You're back. Su Qingsang had gone to Hu Jinyao's villa to get the gifts she had chosen before. Li Qianxue was naturally prepared. However, those gifts were given by her, and her daughter's gifts were given by her daughter. The person who prepared them was different, so the intention was naturally different. Are you tired? I asked you to bring Yusin with you, but you didn't listen. Mom, Yusin was going to school today to report. Why did I ask him to follow me? There are many things anyway. You even asked Xiaoyu and Uncle Zhang to help me. How can I be tired? After Su Qingsang finished speaking, she noticed that her mother's eyes were a little red. Mom, what's wrong? Are you not feeling well? I'm fine. Li Qianxue was also dizzy from anger just now. Now that she saw her daughter, she calmed down. No matter how unbearable Su Chenghui was, he was still Qianxue and Yusin's biological father. If his reputation was ruined, Qianxue and Yusin wouldn't be able to raise their heads in Lin City in the future. Moreover, Su Qingsang married into a family like the Hua family. The kind of family valued reputation the most. Forget it. In any case, she was the one who owed that enemy. He could only endure this anger for now. In the end, it was hard for him to calm down, and he couldn't help but show some emotions on his face. Su Qingsang had been through a lot and was no longer the innocent girl she used to be. Thinking about it, the only thing that could give Li Qianxue a headache was Su Chenghui or Su Peijian. Su Peijian had made a scene yesterday, so her mother probably didn't like her first. As for Su Chenghui, there was only one possibility. He refused to sign the divorce papers. Thinking of the look in Su Chenghui's eyes yesterday, Su Qingsang had mixed feelings. After thinking for a moment, she sat down next to Li Qianxue. I've asked Wu Jinyao about it. He had a villa and an apartment in Rong City. The environment was not bad, and there was more than one place. We'll go there tomorrow. Do you prefer to live in an apartment or a villa? Don't bother him. Li Qianxue patted her hand. We could just stay in a hotel. I'm accompanying you to your home visit. Speaking of which, this is the first time the in-laws are visiting your home. If we live in each other's house, although it's reasonable, it's inevitable that we'll be inferior. Mom, are you going to stay in a hotel? You silly child. Li Qianxue looked at her daughter. No matter how much she doted on her, she couldn't make it up to her enough. When you said that you were leaving, I asked someone to inquire about it. Just buy a house near the Hua family. Even if the Li family can't compare to the Hua family, we still have some money. Mom, Su Qingsang couldn't stand it. Why did these people like to buy houses so easily? You don't have to be so wasteful, do you? How is it wasteful? Li Qianxue held her hand. When you marry over there, no matter how much Wu Jinyao gives you, it will still belong to their family. Women have to be strong and have money, so they won't be looked down upon. It's one thing to be able to stand on your own, but it's another thing to be treated by your family. I'm not only going to buy one house, I'm going to buy a few more. When the time comes, they'll all be under your name. Mom, Su Qingsang was a little embarrassed. When I was in the Hua family, old Master Hua gave me a villa. You're giving me another house. Why do I need so many houses? You little girl, who would complain about having more properties under their name. So what if you have more houses? When the time comes, you can choose which one you like. If you don't like any of them, it doesn't matter. You could just rent them out and collect rent. Seeing Su Qingsang's refusal, she felt very emotional in her heart. All these years, her daughter had lost so many things and suffered so much. Looking at the children of other families in Lin City, which one of them didn't have more than a dozen properties under their name. She was the only daughter who didn't have anything from her family since she was a child. Thinking of this, Li Qianxue began to feel bad again. Don't refuse. You see, when you got married, I didn't even prepare a dowry for you. Although this matter is already over. But Mom really feels bad. Don't bother about these worldly possessions with me. Su Qingsang wanted to say something, but Li Qianxue squeezed her palm hard. Qingsang, Mom has to say something unpleasant. It's naturally good that you like Hu Jinyao's good relationship now. But I've seen through this man. There are very few men like your grandfather in the world. Flowers don't bloom for 100 days, and people don't have 100 days of happiness. You have your own business in Rome City. What if Wajin has any ill intentions in the future? You also have a place to retreat. Although it's convenient to return to Lin City, I won't let his family bully you. But after all, it's more than 2 hours by plane. Just accept it as a way to calm Mom's heart. Okay? Since she said that, Su Qing-sang couldn't say anything more. After thinking about it, she couldn't help but defend Hua Jinyao. Hua Jinyao isn't that kind of person. Mom, don't worry. It's good that he isn't. Li Qianxue thought of her father. I hope he can always be good. I also hope that you and your husband can be happy. After all, it's too hard to find a man like your grandfather in this world. Li Qianxue's mother had hurt her body when she gave birth to Li Qianxue and had never recovered. She was ill for a few years and passed away early. After she passed away, old Master Li didn't trust anyone else to take care of his daughter. Secondly, he couldn't forget his wife, so he never remarried. If it weren't for this, Li Qianxue wouldn't have been spoiled by old Master Li, so she didn't have much scruples at all. That was why she plunged headfirst into Su Qinghui's demon barrier and couldn't get out. Let's not talk about the past. Now, Li Qianxue just wanted Su Qing-sang to live a happy life. Mom, I know. Su Qing-sang had only been back for a few days, but Li Qianxue had been thinking about everything for her. People's hearts were made of flesh. Su Qing-sang wrapped her arms around Li Qianxue's waist and hugged her like a daughter who really relied on her mother. Chapter 459. Xiang Kaiping was a good person. She hoped that Su Peijian could let go of her prejudice and get along well with her. Relationships were nurtured. Sincerity for sincerity, and they were mother and daughter. How could they continue to hate each other? Su Qing-sang really hoped that Su Peijian could think it through and accept Xiang Kaiping. Otherwise, Xiang Caiping's life would be too pitiful. Su Peijian looked at the apartment building in front of her and narrowed her eyes slightly. She naturally knew this place. She had been to Su Qing-sang's old apartment once. Xiang Kaiping, that old woman, lived there. She was her biological mother in name. Su Peijian sneered and touched her nose. A trace of disdain flashed in her eyes. How could someone like Xiang Kaiping compare to Li Qianxue? Not to mention her family background, just her temperament and appearance. Xiang Caiping's face was weather-beaten. She looked to be in her 50s, and her face was full of wrinkles. But what about Li Qianxue? She had taken good care of herself. She looked to be in her early 30s, and the way she talked and did things she usually did. Even when Li Qianxue was angry, she would try her best to maintain her elegance. Xiang Kaiping, on the other hand, had dared to hit her. The two of them could not be compared at all. But now, such an old woman had become her biological mother. Su Peijian gritted her teeth. Thinking of that slap, a trace of hostility flashed in her eyes. She blinked her eyes and suppressed the hostility. The most dangerous place was the safest place. She knew that Su Chenghui was looking for her. He wanted to find her and let her meet Xiang Kaiping. She would never have thought that she would come right to her doorstep like this. Xiang Kaiping stayed in the apartment for the next 2 days. It wasn't that she had nowhere to go, but that she had been shocked and couldn't think of anywhere else to go. She had been listless for the past 2 days. She would eat when Xiao Ning and Xiao Yu called her. She didn't want to go downstairs, and she was even more unwilling to get up to do rehabilitation. It had only been 2 days, but she had become a lot less energetic. She couldn't understand how Su Chenghui, the sunny young man, had become such a person. Was it revenge? Was he crazy? She felt most sorry for her daughter. In her eyes, Su Qing-sang was the best in the world. No matter what, she was better than Su Peijian. However, when she thought of this, she felt that Su Peijian was her own daughter after all. She couldn't continue thinking about it. She hated Su Chenghui from the bottom of her heart. If it weren't for him, how could her daughter have become like this? Annoyed, he decided not to go out and stayed at home every day. Xiao Yu and Xiao Ning were hired by Su Qing-sang and Hua Jinyao to take good care of Xiang Kaiping. However, seeing that she was in a bad mood and Su Qing-sang didn't show up, he knew that something was wrong. Both of them became more careful, taking care of Xiang Kaiping even more. Xiang Kaiping, on the other hand, could not get over it. Her body had already recovered a lot. However, he did not want to do rehabilitation and did not want to go out. Previously, he could still walk a few steps, but now he was completely sitting in a wheelchair. Other than normal physiological needs, he was unwilling to get up and move. This was actually not good for the recovery of the body. Yu Xiaoning was secretly anxious and also tried to call Su Qingseng, asking her to come and have a look. However, when Xiang Kaiping heard what they said, she exploded on the spot. After all, the two of them were outsiders. They did not understand what the mother and daughter were fighting about, so they did not say anything more. After a few days, Xiang Kaiping looked paler and more haggard than before. Yesterday was the Lantern Festival, but there was no festive atmosphere at home. Xiao Ning had a family, so she hurriedly returned home. In the end, she was worried that the old lady would not be able to get over it, so she came back early today. However, not long after lunch, there was a knock on the door. At this time, she did not know who would come. Xiaoyu got up and quickly went to open the door. The person standing outside the door was not someone Xiaoyu knew. She had never seen Su Peijian before, so naturally, she did not know who she was. "Hello, who are you looking for?" The girl in front of her was very young, but her complexion was not very good, and her hair and clothes were a little messy. For a moment, she did not know if the other party was here as a guest or for something else. Before Su Peijian entered the door, she deliberately stood outside the door downstairs for a while in the cold wind, and her hair was a little messy. After taking out the mirror to make sure that her complexion was very bad, she went upstairs. At this time, her pale complexion was not faked. It was really because of the wind. Her body was still very cold, and this kind of discomfort made her blame everything that happened to her today on Su Qingseng. Although she was angry in her heart, a pitiful smile appeared on her face. "Hello, I am looking for Xiang Kaiping." "You're looking for Auntie?" Xiaoyu took a step back. Auntie just returned to her room after eating. "Who are you?" "It's okay. I will go in and find her myself." As she said this, Su Peijian directly walked past Xiaoyu and into the room. Xiaoyu wanted to stop her, but he could not. He could only watch Su Peijian rush in. "Miss, wait a moment. Let me tell Auntie." Before she could finish, Su Peijian had already searched room by room. She did not need to search too much. After all, the room was only so big. When she opened the second door, Su Peijian saw the old woman. She was sitting in a wheelchair. It seemed that she heard the noise and came out to see what was happening. When she saw Su Peijian, Xiang Kaiping was stunned for a moment. However, Su Peijian let out a cry and threw herself in front of Xiang Kaiping. "Mom!" Xiang Kaiping was stunned on the spot. She had been in a bad mood for the past 2 days. Whenever she thought of what Su Chenghui had done, her heart would be filled with hatred. She also regretted that such a good child like Qingseng was not her own daughter. She also thought of Su Peijian's unruly and stubborn personality. All these things made her unable to muster up any interest in acknowledging Su Peijian. After all, there was a gap between the two of them. If she went to Su Peijian's door to acknowledge her, she was not sure if Su Peijian would accept her. After all, Su Peijian was a good young lady. If she acknowledged her, she would become an illegitimate daughter. With Su Peijian's personality, would she really be able to accept it? Although Xiang Kaiping was angry, she could see through this matter very clearly. After all, no matter how bad Su Peijian was, no matter how spoiled she was by Su Chenghui, she was still her child, her flesh and blood. After what happened with Su Qingseng until now, Su Peijian did not come to visit. She was already prepared that Su Peijian would not acknowledge her as her mother. Because of this, she became more and more depressed. Unexpectedly, Su Peijian came. She came so suddenly, and she still looked like this. Looking at Su Peijian hugging her waist and crying, Xiang Kaiping could not react for a moment. When she met Little Yu's curious and surprised gaze, she glanced at her. Little Yu understood tacitly, retreated, and closed the door. "Mom!" Su Peijian cried out again. This time, her tears were real. She was really crying. How could she not cry? She was originally the young lady of the Su family and the department manager of the Li Corporation. Apart from a time when Qiu Yanbao broke off the engagement, Her life had been smooth sailing. However, she never thought that life would take a 180-degree turn at such time. Her grandfather and mother were not her, and neither was her home. The most important thing was that her mother did not want her anymore. She had been with Li Qianxue for more than 20 years. More than 20 years. Could it be that just because she wasn't her biological mother, those 20 years could be erased in one go? Su Peijian did not understand that Li Qianxue was venting her anger on Su Qingwei. She also did not know that her identity had not been revealed until now, because Li Qianxue still cared about the mother-daughter relationship. Now, she only felt that she was pitiful and that she had lost everything. She cried extremely miserably. Xiang Kaiping did not like Su Peijian at first. She had not even thought about whether to acknowledge her as her daughter. But no matter what, she was her own daughter, a flesh and blood that fell from her body. Seeing Su Peijian cry like this, Xiang Caiping's heart softened. She raised her hand, trembled a few times, and finally placed it on top of Su Peijian's head. It was a gentle caress. She did not speak. It was such a simple action. Su Peijian raised her head. Her face was originally exposed to the cold wind outside, and it was frozen pale. Now, she was crying like a pear blossom in the rain, looking extremely pitiful. Xiang Caiping's heart softened. "Don't cry, Mom." Su Peijian bit her lip and shrunk her neck a little timidly. You're not angry with me anymore? Angry? What was there to be angry about? Xiang Kaiping sighed. Let's forget about the past. It's fine as long as you are not angry with me. Su Peijian's tolerance was probably not as big as Su Qingsong's. When the time came, she was the one who abandoned her. She was afraid that she would hate her. Mom. Su Peijian shook her head. At this time, she cried pitifully. I know that my behavior in the past was not good. I also know that because of what happened in the past, you have misunderstood me. Su Peijian's voice sounded hoarse. She sniffled and tried to calm herself down. But now, I really know that I was wrong. Mom, I know that I was wrong. Please forgive me. Xiang Kaiping looked at her and did not know what else to say. All right, I said it's nothing. You can get up. After all, the weather was cold. She was afraid that her knees would not be able to bear it if she half knelt on the ground. I won't get up. Su Peijian's tears flowed even more fiercely. I also only know who is the real family after all these things. Mom, now, I have nothing left. Mom, your daughter, I am about to be forced to death. Xiang Caiping's heart tightened. She looked at Su Peijian and said, What did you say? Who forced you to die? Su Peijian lowered her head and cried even harder. She did not say a word. Xiang Kaiping was furious. She could not help but reach out to pull her. Don't cry. Quickly get up and talk. Speak properly. Who on earth forced you to die? Chapter 460. Yes, Li Qianxue. Su Peijian swallowed the word mother that was about to come out of her mouth and looked at Xiang Kaiping. Ever since she found out that I wasn't her child, she kicked me out. Not only that, but yesterday she invited a lot of relatives and friends, saying that she wanted to clear Su Qingsong's name. I asked her if I was still her daughter, and she kicked me out. Mother, I have nothing. I'm an illegitimate daughter now. This couple had gone too far. Xiang Kaiping was furious. She held Su Peijian's hand. The anger from before was gone, leaving only heartache for Su Peijian. How could she do such a thing? You called her mother for more than 20 years. How could she? I called her mother for more than 20 years because we both thought that we were mother and daughter. But now, her real daughter is back. There's no place for me. Xiang Kaiping knew this was true. In fact, a few days ago, she also kicked Su Qingsong out because she recognized Li Qianxue. But now that it was Su Peijian's turn, she began to feel that Li Qianxue had gone too far. She already hated Li Qianxue for stealing her man. Now that she heard Li Qianxue treat Su Peijian like this, she hated her even more. Good girl. Don't cry. She doesn't recognize you, but I do. She kicked you out, and we don't care. Mother? Su Peijian looked at Xiang Kaiping blankly, as if she didn't understand what she meant. I won't hide it from you. I've saved some money in the past years. Although I can't compare to the Li family and the Hua family. It's enough for us to spend. Don't worry. Follow me from now on. Mother. Su Peijian was about to cry again when she heard this. Xiang Caiping's heart softened when she heard her daughter crying so hard that her voice was hoarse. She sighed and said, "All right, don't cry. You can follow me from now on. Don't worry. I won't let you suffer." Okay. Su Peijian nodded heavily and reached out to hold Xiang Caiping's hand. Mother, I finally understand. What gratitude for raising him up. That was all fake. Only blood kinship was real. From now on, I only have you as my mother and my only family member. Xiang Caiping nodded. Suddenly, she thought of Su Changhui. Li Qinxue drove you out. Didn't your dad say anything? Mom. Su Peijian gritted her teeth, and the sadness on her face became even more obvious. Dad couldn't bear to leave the Li family. Besides, it was Grandpa who called the shots in the family. How could he leave me here without a care? All right. Very good indeed. Xiang Caiping hated Su Changhui to begin with. Hearing this, she hated him even more. I thought he was a man of integrity. He had no choice but to marry that woman. Now, it doesn't seem like it's because they have no other choice. I'm afraid they just can't bear to part with the glory and wealth. Su Peijian lowered her head and looked aggrieved. Dad didn't speak up for me yesterday. You just kept asking me to look for you. I begged him to beg Li Qinxue not to kick me out, but he refused. Originally, I had done so many wrong things before. I really don't have the face to look for you. But no matter what, we are mother and daughter. Besides, I want you to know what kind of person Dad is. So today, I shamelessly came here. Mom, you won't be angry with me, will you? No. Xiang Caiping only hated Su Changhui and Li Qinxue now. With this hatred, she didn't even like the house in front of her. As for the second half of Su Peijian's speech, saying that she didn't want to be kicked out, she wasn't angry. After all, they had been together for more than 20 years. If she really didn't fight back when she was kicked out, she would be too soft-hearted. Now was good. She recognized her position and cut ties with the Su family. Thinking about it, Xiang Caiping almost instantly had an idea. Let's go. Peijian, let's go now. Go. Go where? Leave this place, of course. Xiang Caiping was also angry. Li Qinxue had treated her daughter like this. How could she still have the face to stay in Su Qingsang's house? This house belongs to Su Qingsang. We won't live in it. Let's go now. Su Peijian didn't object. Speaking of which, Dad bought me a house before. Why don't we stay there first? Her luggage was still there. What are we going to stay in your father's house? We won't stay there even if we stay in a hotel. Xiang Caiping was really glad now. She was glad that she didn't have time to give all her property to Su Qingsang out of guilt. Otherwise, the mother and daughter would really be living on the streets now. Mom, staying in a hotel also costs money. My apartment is actually not small. I was kicked out yesterday, so I stayed there for a day. Xiang Caiping already hated Li Qinxue for kicking her daughter out. Now, hearing that her daughter was even fussing about the cost of staying in a hotel, her heart was really hurt. She hated Su Changhui even more. After all, Su Peijian was a child he had raised and doted on for so many years. She kicked her out just like that, without any consideration for her feelings. He treated you like that. Why should you stay in his house? Mom, Su Peijian really didn't want to stay in a hotel. Since my father gave that apartment, it is mine. It would be a waste not to take it. Xiang Caiping thought about it, and it seemed to make sense. Then, she wasn't so angry anymore. I'll pack my things. We'll leave right away. Xiang Caiping stood up as she spoke. Her waist injury wasn't too big of a problem. She just needed to take care of it. Seeing that, Su Peijian stepped forward and said, "Let me help you." No need. Xiang Caiping's waist was not convenient. She didn't want to waste too much time. It's just a few clothes. Sit down and rest for a while. Mom, just let me help you. Su Peijian looked nervous, but she also wanted to be close to her. From now on, only we, mother and daughter, will be left to rely on each other. Xiang Caiping's heart ached again, but she didn't refuse again. Because it was uncomfortable to look at this place, Xiang Caiping only brought some clothes. Fortunately, she had planned to go to Rong City before, so she didn't unpack the 2 suitcases. There was nothing more to pack. After taking some of their belongings, Xiang Caiping and Su Peijian left the room just like that. Outside, Xiaoyu was stunned when he heard the word mom. He didn't know what was going on inside. He told Xiao Ning what had happened in a low voice. Neither of them knew what had happened. When Xiang Kaiping and Su Peijian came out, Xiaoyu went up to them first. He saw the 3 big suitcases next to Xiang Kaiping and Su Peijian. Auntie, we're not staying here. We're leaving now. During this period, Xiang Kaiping had been taken care of by these 2 caregivers. At this moment, Xiang Kaiping's tone was considered friendly. You two come with me. This, Xiao Ning and Xiaoyu looked at each other. Although they said they were taking care of Xiang Kaiping, they were hired by Hua Jinyao. Now that they were leaving, of course, they had to inform Hua Jinyao or Su Qingsang. What is this? Since you're here to take care of my mother, of course, you'll be where my mother is. Su Peijian's attitude was considered polite. The 2 of them thought about it and felt that it made sense. After all, they were hired to take care of Xiang Kaiping. Naturally, they would be where Xiang Kaiping was. Thinking of this, Xiao Yu and Xiao Ning looked at each other. Finally, they went back to the guest room to pack their luggage and followed Su Peijian. Su Peijian drove here. When they went downstairs, she didn't forget to explain to Xiang Kaiping, I was angry yesterday, so I drove out. I didn't think too much about it. Mom, you're not angry, are you? Why would I be? Xiang Kaiping knew what she was referring to. Your father bought this car for you, right? Yes. It was her birthday present this year. However, Su Peijian didn't say this. After putting down the luggage and wheelchair, Xiang Kaiping got in the car and sat in the front passenger seat. Xiao Ning and Xiaoyu sat in the back. Su Peijian then drove to the apartment where she used to live. On the way, Xiao Ning was smart enough to send a message to Su Qingsang about what had happened here. She didn't say anything more. She only said that a young girl came and called Xiang Kaiping mom and took Xiang Kaiping away. Now, they were following her. Soon, Su Qingsang replied to the message. She asked them to continue to take care of Xiang Kaiping and to take good care of her. She also said that she would pay their salary regularly and asked them not to worry. Xiao Ning breathed a sigh of relief. It was good that the master didn't blame them. Otherwise, they would be in trouble. As for the money, Hua Jinyao had paid for half a year's salary in one go. Su Qingsang put down her phone and felt a little emotional. She really didn't expect that Su Peijian would really acknowledge Xiang Kaiping. She thought that with Su Peijian's personality, she wouldn't compromise so easily. No matter what, she would talk about it after a few fights. However, she didn't expect Su Peijian to acknowledge Xiang Kaiping so easily. It seemed that mother-daughter nature was like this. Xiang Kaiping was a good person. She only hoped that Su Peijian could treat her well. However, there was no hurry now. After all, Xiao Ning and Xiaoyu were still by Xiang Kaiping's side. If anything happened, the 2 of them could call each other. Thinking of this, Su Qingsang was more or less relieved. She thought about it for a while and told Li Qianxue about it during dinner that night. She could see that Li Qianxue still had feelings for Su Peijian. Now that Su Peijian had acknowledged Xiang Kaiping, she was afraid that Li Qianxue would have other thoughts. Mom, no matter what, Peijian is Auntie's biological daughter. Now that she has thought it through and is willing to acknowledge her, it can be considered a happy thing. Li Qianxue didn't speak. Her mood was more or less affected. The daughter she had raised for so many years ran away without a word, and now she was acknowledging another woman as her mother. She felt a little upset, but looking at Su Qingsang, she felt that it seemed to be understandable. She had acknowledged her own daughter. How could she stop others from reuniting with her own daughter? She rubbed her temples and spoke in a much softer voice. That's good. They can reunite and live a good life in the future. It won't be too bad. In the future, when Su Peijian got married, she would add some dowry to fulfill the mother-daughter relationship. Old Master Li was silent. No one knew what he was thinking. He turned to look at Su Qingsang. We're going to Rong City tomorrow. Is your luggage packed? Yes. Su Qingsang nodded. If there is anything missing, we can buy it when we get there. That's what I said. Li Qianxue looked at Old Master Li. She was afraid that he would be unhappy with Su Peijian's behavior, so she quickly changed the topic. Dad, didn't you have a friendship with Old Master Hua? It's going to take this opportunity to relax. Old Master Li frowned slightly. It's not really a friendship. We have met a few times, but he is a straightforward person. I didn't expect that the two families would become in-laws one day. This is also fate, Li Chinchua said with a smile. The three of them didn't say anything else. After dinner, they talked about going to Rome City the next day, and then went back to their rooms to rest. The next day, Su Qingsang got up early. Li Chinchua got up even earlier than her. The plane was at 10 o'clock. There was no need to get up so early. However, she thought about going to Rome City and seeing Hua Jinyao soon. Su Qingsang's heart flew with her. The two of them hadn't been apart for many days, just 2 or 3 days. But so many things had happened in between. She felt that she really hadn't seen Hua Jinyao for a long time. Li Chinchua saw that her daughter was in a good mood when she got up. She was a little jealous of Hua Jinyao, but more than that, she was happy. It was also good that her daughter could be happy because her marriage was unfortunate. Thinking of this, she thought of Su Chengwei. Last night, he called to ask if he could delay the signing for a few days. He would wait until he found Su Peijian. If Su Qingsang hadn't told Li Chinchua about Su Peijian going to Xiang Kaiping, Li Chinchua would have been deceived by him again. This man was really disgusting now. He knew that Su Peijian had gone to Xiang Kaiping and her mother. But he still said one thing to her face and another behind her back, saying that Su Peijian had disappeared and came to her to gain sympathy. If it weren't for the reputation of her 2 children in the future, Li Chinchua really wanted to completely fall out with him and make him lose face. She thought about coming to Rome City today. In the end, she didn't want to make things difficult for herself. She left this matter to Lawyer Chan to deal with. Anyway, she was in no hurry. Su Chengwei could escape for a while, but he couldn't escape forever. When she came back from Rome City, he would have to sign it even if he didn't want to. Mom, let's go. When she came back to her senses and met Su Qingsang's concerned eyes, Li Chinchua felt warm. One on the left and one on the right, the two of them supported Old Master Li out of the door. When the plane landed in Rome City, it was just after lunchtime. Old Master Li was getting old, and such a short flight was tiring. After more than 2 hours on the plane, he wanted a rest. Before coming, Li Chinchua had already begun to pay attention to the houses here, but even if they found a suitable one, they had to clean it up first. Therefore, the three of them could only stay in a hotel for the time being. Li Chinchua rented the presidential suite of the largest 5-star hotel in Rome City. After entering the room, she asked Old Master Li to rest for a while. She also wanted to rest for a while and then visit Old Master Hu the next morning. Su Qingsang was hungry, so she asked the hotel to send food upstairs. Not long after, there was a knock on the door. Su Qingsang thought it was the hotel, so she didn't think much and quickly ran to open the door. However, when she opened the door, the person standing outside was Hua Jinyao. Chapter 461. Hua Jinyao. She blinked hard. It wasn't an illusion. It was really Hua Jinyao. He was holding a thick coat, wearing gloves, and a scarf around his neck. Rome City was in the north. It had just snowed outside, and the weather was very cold. But Su Qingsang couldn't hide the surprise on her face. Before she could react, her body had already stepped forward and hugged him tightly. Hua Jinyao smiled and reached out to hold Su Qingsang in his arms. He lowered his head and kissed her on the lips. Su Qingsang turned around and kissed him. Her eyes were full of surprise and surprise. "Why are you here?" "No. How did you know I was here? How did you know I was in the hotel?" "I knew as soon as you got off the plane. It was a coincidence." When Su Qingsang left the airport, she met Li Junsheng, who was on his way back to Lin City. Of course, he recognized Su Qingsang. He found that they were actually walking in the direction of a taxi, and no one came to pick them up. He was a little surprised, so he called Hua Jinyao and asked why he didn't get someone to pick Su Qingsang up. Only then did Hua Jinyao know that Su Qingsang had come to Rome City. The hotel she was staying in belonged to Wan Xinying's family. He knew as soon as Su Qingsang checked in. The company wasn't very far from here, and he knew that Su Qingsang was coming, so he naturally came to see his wife as soon as possible. When Su Qingsang saw Hua Jinyao, she couldn't help but lean over and kiss his lips several times. Although Hua Jinyao was very satisfied with his wife's closeness, it was far from enough. He hooked his arm around her slender waist and kissed her deeply. Su Qing-sang hooked her arms around his neck and let him carry her off the ground to respond to his kiss. They hadn't seen each other for a few days. Absence really made the heart grow fonder. Hu Jinyao was a little moved. He carried her and took 2 steps inside. With a gentle push of his heel, the door closed. He turned his body and was about to press Su Qing-sang against the wall deeper when he heard a cough behind him. Hu Jinyao and Su Qing-sang quickly separated. Su Qing-sang, in particular, gritted her teeth and glared at him. Li Qianxue didn't expect to see such a scene as soon as she came out of the room. She was also a little uncomfortable. She cleared her throat and looked at Hu Jinyao. "Why are you here?" Hu Jinyao told them the reason for his appearance. He looked at Li Qianxue and said, "Mom, why didn't you tell me you were coming? I'll send someone to pick you up. I wanted to give you a surprise." Su Qing-sang hooked her arm around his. "What do you think? Are you surprised? What do you think?" Hu Jinyao rubbed the top of her head affectionately. The young couple seemed to be very close. Li Qianxue felt much better after hearing Hu Jinyao call her mother and seeing how much he cared about her daughter. Hu Jinyao put his arm around Su Qing-sang's waist and said, "Since you're back, let's stay at home. Who would stay in a hotel after returning? I was going to visit you tomorrow." Li Qianxue looked at Hu Jinyao and said, "I don't think your family agreed to your marriage. That's why I thought of paying a visit with Qing-sang's grandfather tomorrow. First, it was to let the marriage between the 2 families go through the open road. Second, it was to show the whole family their attitude. Their Qing-sang also had a maiden family. Then Mom and Grandpa can stay here. I'll take Qing-sang home." "No need. I'll stay here with Mom. Anyway, it'll be the same if we go tomorrow." "Okay." Hu Jinyao didn't object. However, Li Qianxue thought about it and felt that it wasn't appropriate. "Forget it, Qing-sang. I don't need your company. You should go home with Hu Jinyao." "Mom." Su Qing-sang was a little surprised. "We're going to stay in Rome City for a few days anyway. You guys go home first. You're already back and married to Hu Jinyao. If you don't go back with him, it won't be good." If it weren't for the fact that it was afternoon and inconvenient to visit, Li Qianxue and Old Master Li would have visited the whole family as soon as possible. According to the customs of Lin City, visiting one's in-laws for the first time couldn't be done after noon. Okay. I'll stay here and have dinner with you before going back." Su Qing-sang looked at Hu Jinyao as she spoke. "What do you think? You can decide such a small matter." As Hu Jinyao spoke, the waiter had already brought lunch over. Li Qianxue called out, "Old Master Li." He saw that Hu Jinyao had come. He wasn't surprised. Hu Jinyao greeted Old Master Li. He hadn't had lunch yet, so they went together. "Mom, if you're in good spirits this afternoon, why don't I take you around? Wouldn't it be inconvenient? Don't you need to go to work?" "It's okay. The company won't collapse, even if I don't go to the company for half a day." "That's good." Old Master Li had been very satisfied with his grandson-in-law before, and now he could only be even more satisfied. "You're in luck." It was still snowing in Rome City the day before yesterday. It was cloudy yesterday, but it's sunny today. Hu Jinyao waited for them to pack up and took them out of the room. He said, "There's a square nearby with a nice view of the snow. I'll take you guys for a walk." It was the first snow in Rome City after the beginning of spring, and it was very heavy. In the morning, Li Qianxue and the others got off the plane and were amazed. After all, it rarely snowed in Lin City. Even if it did, it was sleet. I wanted to see it just now. When Su Qing-sang got off the plane, she wanted to take pictures of the snow. She wanted to settle Old Master Li and the others first, so she went back to the hotel. After leaving the hotel and getting into the car, Su Qing-sang rubbed her hands. "It's so cold. Are you cold?" There was a heater in the car, but it was really cold when they went out just now. Hu Jinyao took Su Qing-sang's hand and put it in his arms. "I'll warm it for you." "No." Su Qing-sang was a little embarrassed and looked at Old Master Li and Li Qianxue, who were sitting on the other side of the car. "When we go back, I really want Annie Wong to give you good nutrition. I think your hands get cold in winter." "I think so too." Li Qianxue saw that her son-in-law was so nice to her daughter and felt comfortable. "Look at Qing-sang. She's so thin. She's grown up, and I can't control her anymore. You can control her later and make her eat more. Mom, I'm not thin, okay? Su Qing-sang retorted. I have a standard figure. Mom, don't worry. Hua Jinyao squeezed her little hand. I'll give Qing-sang good nutrition. Su Qing-sang glared at him with a hint of reproach in her eyes. Hua Jinyao squeezed her little hand and said softly, Don't worry. Annie Wong is good at making medicinal cuisine. She'll make you fat. Screw you. Su Qing-sang couldn't help but say, Do you think you're feeding pigs? You admit that you're a pig. I didn't say that. Hua Jinyao, was he itching for a beating? Su Qing-sang gritted her teeth and couldn't help but want to hit him. She seemed to be about to explode, which made Hua Jinyao's smile even more obvious. Li Qianxue sat on the side and watched with a smile, but she couldn't hide the bitterness in her heart. Su Qing-sang was so comfortable with Hua Jinyao. As a mother, she had never seen her like this. In her impression, Su Qing-sang had almost no presence in the Su family. Every time there were guests at home, she hid in her room while waiting. Every time something happened in the Su family, she basically didn't show up. When eating, she would sit as far away from Su Chenghui and Old Master Li as possible, trying to be invisible. She used to think that Su Qing-sang was like that. Now she knew that wasn't the case. She also had such a lively and cheerful side, but as a mother, she could only see this side of her daughter because of her son-in-law. Thinking of this, Li Qianxue hated Su Chenghui even more. If it weren't for him, why would Su Qing-sang suppress her nature? Why was she so cautious before? Li Qianxue really wronged Su Chenghui in this matter. Su Qing-sang had always been a cold person. She slowly changed after she got together with Hua Jinyao. Su Qing-sang raised her hand and wanted to pinch Hua Jinyao. Then she realized that Li Qianxue and Old Master Li were both there, so she had to put her hand down. Then she sat down and couldn't help it. She rolled her eyes at Hua Jinyao. In Li Qianxue's eyes, Su Qing-sang's action was a sign that she was still afraid of her. Her heart became more and more bitter. She also decided to treat Su Qing-sang better in the future. Rong City was very prosperous, and it was very close to the capital. There used to be a foreign concession here. The square that Hua Jinyao mentioned used to be one of the concessions. Because it was a concession of two countries, they were separated by a street, so they could clearly see one architectural style on the left and another on the right. Such a street view could not be seen in other cities. And in the middle, there was a huge fountain. At this time, because it was snowing, it was covered with thick snow. The car was parked very far away, and a group of people walked over. The snow on the road had been swept away by the sanitation workers. But the snow on the roofs and on both sides of the road was still very thick. When the wind blew, Su Qing-sang's body trembled. Hua Jinyao wrapped his arms around her shoulders in time. Su Qing-sang smiled at him and stopped to wait for Old Master Li and Li Qianxue. Li Qianxue was fine. She had been to the snow village in the past. Old Master Li was also in good spirits, but he walked a little slowly because of the wind. Grandpa, are you okay? I'm fine. Old Master Li waved his hand. Seeing the nervous eyes of a younger generation, he waved his hand and said, Okay, I have a cane. I don't need you to help me. Parking was not allowed here. The former embassies of various countries on both sides had now been turned into shops. It could be called one of the most prosperous streets in Rome City. The last time Su Qing-sang came here, she had also been here, but it hadn't snowed at that time. Now that it was snowing, it was a completely different street view. As a southerner, Su Qing-sang really felt that it was very novel to see snow. When walking to the open space in front, Su Qing-sang saw many children playing games in the distance, making snowmen and having snowball fights. She suddenly became playful. She grabbed a handful of snow on the side and threw it at Hua Jinyao. Chapter 462. Su Qing-sang quickly dodged. Hua Jinyao wouldn't let her go so easily. Growing up in the north, she moved much faster than Su Qing-sang. He threw 3 of them in a row. In the end, Su Qing-sang only dodged 1, and the other 2 were hit by him. Unconvinced, she hid behind the fountain and made a snowball to fight back. However, it didn't hit Hua Jinyao, but Li Qianxue. Su Qing-sang was embarrassed. She stood there, that didn't know where to put her hands. It's okay. Li Chinchue was happy to see her daughter so lively. Afraid that Su Qingsang would feel uncomfortable, she even made a snowball and threw it in Su Qingsang's direction. Li Chinchue's action made Su Qingsang feel relieved, but she was hit by Hu Jinyao again. She was annoyed. He picked up a handful of snow and rushed toward Hu Jinyao. On the other side, Li Chinchue clapped her hands and brushed the snow off her body. Turning around, she found that old Master Li was looking at her, and she felt a little uncomfortable. Dad, in the past, old Master Li always wanted her to be a standard lady. But the act of throwing snowballs was not ladylike. That's good. Old Master Li patted her hand. Don't look at me. I can see through it now. These feelings were all formed in the first place. Qingsang is not bad, but she hasn't opened her heart to you yet. You just need to spend more time. After a while, she will know. Yes. Li Chinchue nodded. She thought so too. How could old Master Li not know that Su Qingsang was estranged from them? It was just that he saw through it, but did not say it out loud. This was also the reason why he agreed to let Li Chinchue come to Rong City. Let's get along slowly. He wanted to nurture his relationship with his granddaughter. Don't worry, Qingsang is a good kid. She'll grow closer to you. I know, Dad. Li Chinchue watched as Hu Jinyao kept hitting Su Qingsang, but Su Qingsang didn't hit a single one. His face was flushed with anger. Hu Jinyao stopped to comfort her, but he didn't know that she was pretending to be angry. When he got close, a snowball flew over. Seeing that Hu Jinyao was hit, she giggled in the wind. The laughter was heard, and Li Chinchue also laughed. It didn't matter. She was still young and had a long way to go. She was in no hurry. Li Chinchue wasn't the only one who saw Hu Jinyao and Su Qingsang playing in the snow. Someone else saw it as well. Stop. Lu Lixin touched his chin and gestured for the driver to stop the car, then rolled down the window. Beside him was his friend, Shun Jishang. On such a cold day, when the wind blew in, Shun Jishang shrunk his body. What's going on? Close the window. Am I seeing things? Isn't that Hu Jinyao? Shun Jishang glanced at it from afar. It seems so. Why is he here? Don't you have to work today? Who knows? Who is the woman with him? Isn't he married? Hu Jinyao had gotten married in a low-key manner. The last time he brought Su Qingsang back, he only stayed for a few days before leaving. That was why Lu Lixin had never met Su Qingsang. After staring for a while, he suddenly looked at Shun Jishang and said, "Let's go down and take a look. What do you want?" Shun Jishang looked at him and opened the door. Hey, you can't park here. Lu Lixin acted as if he hadn't heard him and quickly walked to Hu Jinyao. Su Qingsang had been fighting with Hu Jinyao for a long time, so she was exhausted. Leaning against Hu Jinyao's chest, she was so cold that her face was red, and she couldn't stop panting. You cheated. Su Qingsang was furious. You're so bad. She had only pretended to be angry, but Hu Jinyao had pretended to be injured. When she came to, she had been hit several times. Honey, I'm really touched that you care about me so much. Who cares about you? Su Qingsang gently patted him. She was angry at herself for losing the battle. I'm not going to talk to you anymore. I'm going to my mother's. Li Chinchue and old Master Li weren't like young people like them. They picked a cafe and went to rest. Okay, cousin. Hu Jinyao's smile disappeared when he heard the voice. He turned around and looked at Lu Lixin. Cousin, what a coincidence. Why are you here? Lu Lixin smiled brightly, but in Su Qingsang's eyes, there was something indescribable about it. Her first reaction was that she didn't like this person. Hu Jinyao didn't answer Lu Lixin's question. He just hummed in response. Lu Lixin didn't mind Hu Jinyao's cold attitude. He glanced at Su Qingsang with a meaningful look in his eyes. This is since Hu Jinyao was married. She had to be a woman from another family. She was quite pretty. This is your cousin-in-law. Hu Jinyao's voice turned cold, and his face darkened. Cousin-in-law, Lu Lixin was surprised. Isn't she in Lin's city? Is she back? Yes. Hu Jinyao had no choice but to introduce them to Su Qingsang. Qingsang, this is Lu Lixin, my uncle's son. This is Su Qingsang, your cousin-in-law. Be more respectful next time. Of course. She didn't come back for the new year, and I didn't have the chance to meet her. I thought she was you. Lu Lixin coughed. He didn't finish his sentence, but Hu Jinyao and Su Qingsang understood what he meant. Hu Jinyao's face darkened. He glanced at him coldly. Don't talk nonsense. Do you think everyone is like you? Speaking of Lu Lixin, he was his uncle's son. He had been spoiled by his parents since he was a child. When he grew up, he didn't have a proper job. He relied on his family's wealth to indulge in debauchery. Hu Jinyao had never liked Lu Lixin. Similarly, Lu Lixin didn't like Hu Jinyao either. Lu Lixin didn't like Hu Jinyao either. Hu Jinyao entered the Tianyu group at a young age. His methods were high, and he did things swiftly and decisively. Other people who weren't as wealthy as the Hu family would always praise Hu Jinyao, especially Hu Jinyao's uncle, Lu Chengren. Every time he saw Lu Lixin misbehaving, he would compare him to Hu Jinyao. His mantra was, look at Hu Jinyao. As time went by, Hu Jinyao didn't like Lu Lixin, and Lu Lixin disliked Hu Jinyao even more. Yes, I'm just a spoiled brat. Of course I can't compare to people like you, who are virtuous and ambitious. Lu Lixin wasn't angry at Hu Jinyao's humiliation. He laughed at himself, then turned to Su Qingsang. Since you're my cousin-in-law, I wonder when you'll be free. Come to our house. My father has always treated my cousin as my biological brother. Cousin, you should bring my sister-in-law to meet my father too, right? I'll visit uncle in a few days. Hu Jinyao didn't like Lu Lixin, but he still respected Lu Chengren. Lu Lixin saw the displeasure in Hu Jinyao's eyes when he finished speaking. He thought that Su Qingsang was Hu Jinyao's mistress when he saw her from afar. He was thinking that if it was true, he could have a good talk with his father. It wasn't a good idea to look at Hu Jinyao either. That way, his father wouldn't compare Hu Jinyao to him all the time. Not now. Lu Lixin felt bored, so he bade farewell to the man and left. On his way back, he ran into Shen Jishang, who had parked his car and was walking over. Lu Lixin was getting bored when he suddenly had an idea. So what if she wasn't his mistress? It was office hours. Hu Jinyao had left his work to hang out with his wife. Wasn't he also addicted to women? Lu Lixin was in a good mood. He patted Shen Jishang's shoulder and said, Let's go. Let's go somewhere. Where? To see my aunt. He had finally found Hu Jinyao's weakness, so he had to take advantage of it. Should he complain to his aunt about him? I'm not going. Shen Jishang was most afraid of Lu Tongjia. Everyone in Rong City knew that the scariest person in the Hu family wasn't old Master Hu, but Lu Tongjia. When she scolded people with a cold face, even Lu Lixin couldn't stop her. Shen Jishang often went out with Lu Lixin to have fun. Lu Tongjia had criticized him a lot. However, Lu Tongjia was the president of the Women's Chamber of Commerce in Rong City. Their parents all knew Lu Tongjia. Every time they were caught doing something bad, they would talk about it in front of their mothers. As time went by, all the rich boys in Rong City became afraid of Lu Tongjia. Don't worry, my aunt won't scold you this time. Lu Lixin winked at Shen Jishang. His eyes were full of evil intentions. What did you say? Su Peijian's face darkened when she heard the news from the other side of the phone. Su Qingsang isn't in Lin City? Where did she go? I see. Su Peijian's face darkened after she hung up. Su Qingsang went to Rong City. Did she know that I was going to deal with her? No, that was impossible. They wouldn't be stupid enough to leak the conversation she had with Luo Haonan that night. Su Peijian realized that Hu Jinyao was from Rong City. She had gone to Rong City to be with her man. She didn't have any friends in Rong City, and she wasn't familiar with the place. It would be difficult for her to deal with Su Qingsang. Su Peijian thought for a while, then picked up her phone and called home. It was Xiaoyu who answered. Xiaoyu, where's my mom? Xiaoyu was surprised to receive Su Peijian's call. Mrs. Qin went to Rong City. She's not home right now. Xiaoyu didn't think too much about it. After all, Mrs. Qin didn't tell her not to tell anyone where she was going. Moreover, Su Peijian was a member of the Su family. What about Grandpa? Old Master went there too. Xiaoyu thought for a while and added, Old Master went to Rong City with Mrs. Qin. He went with Su Qingsang, didn't he? Su Peijian's tone grew colder. Xiao Yu realized that she had said something wrong. She apologized and hung up the phone with the excuse that she had something to do in the kitchen. Chapter 463. Su Peijian looked at the word Dad flashing on the screen. She pressed her lips into a straight line. Like Xiang Kaiping, the person Su Peijian hated the most was Su Chenghui. She hated him for changing her identity. She hated that he didn't harden his heart to the end. He just had to expose her at this time. She hated that he didn't speak up for her in front of Li Qianxue and let her drive her out. What she hated the most was that he gave her the dream of being a princess, but in the end, it was shattered. After thinking for a long time, Su Peijian finally picked up the phone. Dad, Peijian, you finally picked up my call. Where are you now? Su Chenghui had been calling Su Peijian nonstop. However, Su Peijian didn't pick up. We tried to contact Li Qianxue. He was mocked by her for a long time. She said that he did it on purpose, saying that Su Peijian was missing so that he wouldn't sign the papers. He wanted to explain, but she hung up the phone. Su Chenghui didn't expect that Li Qianxue could be so cold to Su Peijian now. He didn't know that Li Qianxue already knew that Su Peijian and Xiang Kaiping had reconciled. Naturally, she thought he was lying. Su Chenghui was relieved that he finally got in touch with his daughter. Peijian, where have you been these 2 days? I've been looking for you everywhere, but I can't find you. I'm so worried. Worried? I'm an adult. I won't get lost. What's there to worry about? Su Peijian didn't want to hear Su Chenghui's hypocritical concern. If he really cared about her, he should find a way to restore her identity. You, how can you talk to Dad like that? Su Chenghui was shocked by his daughter's attitude. His face was a little pale. Su Peijian lowered her head. She knew that her attitude was wrong, but she couldn't bring herself to apologize. Dad, what's the matter? I just wanted to ask where you are. Peijian, some things have happened. I hope. Dad, can you restore my identity? Su Peijian suddenly said seriously. Can you let my mother recognize me again? Su Chenghui was stunned. How is that possible? Li Qianxue's attitude was so fierce and resistant during the calls. She knew that Su Peijian was missing, but she didn't care. How could she recognize Su Peijian? Peijian, actually, I've thought about it for you. The funds you invested in 2 years ago and the ones your family bought for you. Even if you don't have the identity of the eldest daughter of the Su family, you can still live well for the rest of your life. Su Chenghui softened his voice and added, in 2 years, when you get married, I'll give you another dowry. Why are you so fixated on that identity? This identity was stolen in the first place. Now that he knew, he naturally had to return it. He had also thought about it for Su Peijian, as long as she did not spend too much. With her current net worth, she could live a carefree life for the rest of her life. After all, Su Peijian had been by his side in the early years. She had many funds and stocks under her. With these dividends, she had a considerable income every year. Su Peijian chuckled. Status? What else could people live in this world if not by status? Peijian, all right. Since you can't help me achieve my wish, then I have nothing to say to you. Peijian. Su Chenghui was hit by Su Peijian's attitude. You? How can you say that? What else can I say? Su Peijian chuckled. You don't want me anymore. You kicked me out. What else can I say? No one kicked you out. Su Chenghui didn't want Su Peijian to misunderstand Li Qianxue. Your mother didn't kick you out. She just said that I am no longer her daughter, but you are still my daughter. That's good. I will move back to the Su family today and live with you. What do you think? Su Chenghui was speechless. He couldn't tell her that he had actually been kicked out by Li Qianxue. Peijian, I have a villa in Nanjiang district. How about we live there for the time being? No need. Su Peijian didn't want to talk about this. I have a place to live now. You don't have to worry about it, Dad. Peijian, are you blaming me? I don't dare. How could I blame you? Actually, I should thank you. I am an illegitimate daughter who has enjoyed the life of the eldest daughter of the Su family for more than 20 years. Su Chenghui was really uncomfortable now. He didn't expect that the daughter he had doted on for so many years would say such a thing now. Peijian, this is indeed my fault. But for so many years, whether it is your mother, me, or your grandfather, all of them have loved you. Which one of them doesn't love you dearly in the palm of their hands? You said that you have enjoyed the life of the Su family for more than 20 years. Why can't you recognize the reality now? I admit it. I recognize it. So, Dad, since I am no longer the eldest daughter of the Su family, I am just an illegitimate daughter. You don't have to care about me. You could just ignore me like Su Qing-sang and let me live and die on my own. Su Peixian. That's all. Su Peixian hung up the phone. The anger in her heart made her uncomfortable. She didn't suppress it even when she returned to her apartment. Xiang Kaiping looked more energetic. Her daughter was back anyway. She had something to look forward to again. Moreover, Su Peixian was the little rabbit who was bullied by the Li family. She felt that she must live well and take good care of Su Peixian. You're back. Dinner is ready. You can eat now. The moment Su Peixian saw Xiang Kaiping, she squeezed out a smile. Mom, I had something to do today and came back a little late. You won't blame me, right? Why would I? Xiang Kaiping held her hand. If you really have something to do, you can call me if you don't come back for dinner. Thank you, Mom. Mom, you are so nice. Let's eat. Xiang Kaiping and Su Peixian sat down. Since Xiang Kaiping recognized Su Peixian, she wanted to get along well with her, just like how she treated Su Qing-sang. You have been out for half a day. Have you finished your business? At the mention of this, Su Peixian's face darkened. Xiang Kaiping was anxious. What's wrong? What happened? Nothing. Su Peixian shook her head. Mom, I actually went out to look for a job today. You know, since I was kicked out of the Su family, I can't go back to work in the Li group. That's why I went out to look for a job today, but I didn't expect. At this point, Su Peixian suddenly smiled and said, Forget it. Let's not talk about it. Mom, let's eat. What happened? Tell me clearly. Nothing. Su Peixian bit her lip and sounded a little sad. I asked a few companies that I used to work with, but they didn't laugh at me and said that I was down and out. They just asked me why I left the Li group and went out to look for a job. Mom, I really can't stand this kind of anger. In the future, as long as I am in the business circle of Lin City, I won't be able to hold my head high. Mom, that's too much. Xiang Kaiping put down her chopsticks and was a little angry. Peixian, don't worry about it. They're just snobs who look down on people. They're not worth your anger. I know. Su Peixian bit her lip and looked aggrieved. It doesn't matter if I'm laughed at. I'm just afraid that I won't be able to find a job if I go out like this. After all, if I can't even stay in the Li group, who would want me? Her words were very suggestive. People who didn't know better would think that the Li group had kicked her out, so other companies wouldn't want her. Outrageous. Xiang Kaiping was really angry this time. What is Li Chinchua trying to do? Is she bullying people? Isn't she just relying on her family's money? Mom, actually, if I can't find a job, I can just use less money. But I still want to make money so I can be filial to you. But Xiang Kaiping looked at her and felt a little pain in her heart. No matter what, she was her daughter. A few years ago, she was the daughter of a rich family. Now that she had become like this, it was no wonder that people treated her like this. I don't think I can stay in Lin City anymore. If I stay here any longer, I will just be a joke. Su Peixian's voice became more and more aggrieved. Who dares? Xiang Kaiping's voice was a little higher, as if she was afraid of scaring Su Peixian. She suppressed her anger and suppressed it. Peixian, why don't you leave Lin City with me? She looked at Su Peixian tentatively. Leave this place? Su Peixian blinked, looking confused. But where else can I go if I leave this place? Rong City. Xiang Kaiping had already made up her mind. Mom has a business in Rong City, although it's not as good as the Li families. But it's enough for us to live. If you don't like working for others, I can also let you manage the 2 supermarkets under my name. What do you think of this? Su Peixian looked at Xiang Kaiping and sneered inwardly. It was just 2 supermarkets. Did she think she would care? However, if he went to Rong City, he could be closer to Su Qing-sang. Therefore, she pretended to be touched and looked at Xiang Kaiping with tears in her eyes. Mom, I'm so sorry. You're so nice. All right. Don't cry. I told you, from now on, everything I have is yours. I just hope that everything will be smooth and happy in the future. I'm satisfied. All right. Su Peixian blinked her eyes and forced back her tears. She put her arm around Xiang Kaiping's arm and said, Mom, don't worry. When I make some money, I'll be sure to take good care of you. Then I'll wait. They were mother and daughter, after all. Seeing that her daughter was happy, Xiang Kaiping was also relieved. The atmosphere here seemed to be good, but on the other side of Rong City, the atmosphere was not so good. Lu Tongjia looked at Lu Lixian with a sullen face. What did you say? Say it again. Lu Lixian was frightened by his aunt's attitude and shrank back. Well, I said that I saw my cousin and his wife in the square. Isn't he working today? I just wanted to ask why he didn't go to work. While Lu Lixian was blinking his eyes, Lu Tongjia was infuriated. Chapter 464. Lu Lixian was a little scared by Lu Tongjia's attitude. No, my cousin introduced her like this. He said her name was Su something Sang. Lu Lixian couldn't remember. Lu Tongjia sneered. Su Qing Sang. Yes, that's her name. Lu Lixian found that his aunt seemed to be very angry, but he couldn't figure out why. Was she angry at Jin Yao for taking Su Qing Sang out, or was she angry at her daughter-in-law? Why did she sound so angry? Old Master Hua, who was sitting on the side, didn't look too good. As for Hua Mingguang, his expression was even worse. Lu Tongjia was the one who looked the most upset. She stood up and looked at old Master Hua. Dad, look. What did I say? I said that a woman from small family, like Hua Jin Yao, would be short-sighted and ignorant. What did you say? You said that Jin Yao picked her himself. It's fine as long as he likes her. But now? She's back, but she's not going home. Instead, she's having fun outside. Does she have any respect for this family? Does she have any respect for us? Old Master Hua didn't look happy, but he was still rational. We haven't figured it out yet. Maybe there's some other reason. What reason? What other reason could there be? Does she think I can't tell? She knows that I don't like her, so she won't even go home with Jin Yao. Otherwise, what other reason could there be? The more Lu Tongjia thought about it, the angrier she got. I told him to break up with that woman a long time ago, but he wouldn't listen. Now he's been seduced by her? That's enough. That's enough. Old Master Hua had never been dissatisfied with Lu Tongjia, but sometimes he thought that she was too arrogant. He wasn't happy that Su Qing Sang was back, but she didn't come home. But he wasn't an unreasonable elder. Call Jin Yao and ask him what's going on. Lu Tongjia, on the other hand, was furious. I won't fight. I want to see when he's going to bring her home. I also want to see how arrogant this Su Qing Sang is. If she has the guts, she can stay away from our family forever. Old Master Hua furrowed his brows. Although he didn't agree with Lu Tongjia, he didn't say anything. Lu Lixian sat to the side with a gloating look on his face. Hua Jinyao held Su Qing Sang's hand and walked to the cafe where Old Master Li and Li Qianxue were. How are you these days? The reason why Hua Jinyao returned to Rong City earlier was that he wanted Su Qing Sang to spend more time with Li Qianxue. The phone call from before sounded good. Not bad. Su Qing Sang smiled at him and told him about Li Qianxue accompanying her to Rong City. I think she's fine. Originally, she wanted me to accompany her for a few more days, but in the end, she followed me so far away. It's cold here, and I can tell that she's not used to it. Yes. He also said that he would buy me a house. Su Qing Sang repeated Li Qianxue's words. He couldn't help but laugh. How could I have fallen to such a state? If you feel sorry for me, I could just find a hotel to stay in. Hua Jinyao suddenly stopped and stood in front of Su Qing Sang, looking down at her. You don't believe me? Of course not. I didn't say that. Su Qing Sang put on an innocent face. Hua Jinyao narrowed his eyes and suddenly put his face in front of Su Qing Sang's. You'd better not have such thoughts. So what if I do? Su Qing Sang raised her petite face with a provocative look. Hua Jinyao suddenly turned his face and bit her on the lips. Su Qing Sang took a step back in pain. Hua Jinyao put his arm around her waist and looked at her with narrowed eyes. If you have such thoughts, I don't mind proving it with my actions. Su Qing Sang understood what he meant by prove it with my actions. She blushed. Stop it. My mom is waiting. Hua Jinyao turned to take her hand and led her to the direction of the cafe. The buildings on the outer streets nearby were of foreign style, but the buildings 2 streets away were of local characteristics. After resting in the cafe for a while, Hu Jinyao took Old Master Li and Li Qianxue to walk around. There were a lot of toys, but Li Qianxue and Old Master Li were not interested. Su Qingsang, on the other hand, was very interested. She looked at the stalls here and there for a while. Often, Hu Jinyao said he wanted to buy it after she took a few glances at it. Su Qingsang couldn't stand it, so she stopped looking. These are just fun to look at. There's no place to put them at home. Let's go. I just heard that there's a food street up ahead. Hu Jinyao raised his eyebrows and looked at Li Qianxue and Old Master Li behind him. They were not people who would go to the food street to eat. Su Qingsang stuck out her tongue. She really wanted to go. Qingsang, go if you want to. We'll accompany you. Although Li Qianxue had never eaten roadside food, she could eat whatever her daughter liked. Then let's go and have a look. Su Qingsang's overly cautious attitude made Li Qianxue's heart ache again. She took her hand and turned to look at Old Master Li. Dad, I've never been to a place like that. Let's go together. Old Master Li had no reason to disagree. So the group turned a corner and went to the food street not far away. Su Qingsang was too embarrassed to eat in front of so many people. However, when she saw the roasted sweet potatoes, she couldn't help it. I want one. It had just snowed, so it was very cold here. It was very comfortable to eat a hot roasted sweet potato. No, Hu Jinyao rejected immediately. It's such a big one. You won't eat dinner after eating it. Then I'll eat half, and you can eat the other half. Hu Jinyao looked disgusted. Su Qingsang was annoyed. Hey, are you eating or not? No. Hu Jinyao was quite unyielding. Didn't you see the news? This. When he saw the old man looking at the roasted sweet potato, Hu Jinyao cleverly stopped talking. Su Qingsang gave him a smug look and went forward to ask for 2 sticks. The old man helped her pack them. When he heard that she didn't bring change, he took out his phone and asked her to scan the QR code. Uncle, you're so fashionable. You even know this payment app. This is called keeping up with the times. I asked my son to teach me for a long time before I learned it. The old man smiled and looked at Su Qingsang. Little girl, are you full with so many people eating only 2? I'll give you another one. No need. No need. Thank you, uncle. That's enough. Su Qingsang was shocked by the old man's enthusiasm and hurriedly brought 2 sweet potatoes over. When she brought them over, she glanced at Li Qianxue. Mom, do you want to try? Li Qianxue's expression was very good at this time. She had lived for almost half of her life and had never eaten something like this. Looking at the roasted sweet potato that was still steaming, her expression was a little strange. Mom, don't you want one? This is really delicious. Su Qingsang looked at Li Qianxue's expression and knew that she had never eaten something like this. I'm not lying to you. When I was in college, Shiming Wan and I often went to the school gate to buy this after the evening self-study session. Let's try it, Old Master Li said first. He took the sweet potato, directly broke it open, and gave half to Li Qianxue. When I was young, I ate a lot of this. It doesn't make sense that my stomach has become fragile now that I'm old. Dad, Li Qianxue had no choice but to take it, but her face was full of embarrassment. You're not asking me to eat this on the street, are you? It's not a big deal. They don't know us anyway. Su Qingsang smiled, turned around, and gave half of it to Hu Jinyao. The meaning in her eyes was obvious. Grandpa and Mom both ate it. It didn't make sense that he was more fragile than them, right? Hu Jinyao rubbed the top of her head and took the half of the sweet potato, helplessly. He took a bite and found that it was quite sweet. It's not bad. It is. Su Qingsang was satisfied. Let's go. Hu Jinyao felt a little helpless. He was the dignified young Master Hua. When had he ever eaten from such a stall? It was also to cooperate with Su Qingsang. But Su Qingsang thought it was quite good. Hu Jinyao, a tall man more than 8 meters tall, held a roasted sweet potato and ate it on the road. Feeling the gazes around him, he wanted to throw the sweet potato away. Li Qianxue actually felt uncomfortable. No matter how spoiled she was still raised by Old Master Li as the daughter of a noble family. When had she ever done such a thing? However, seeing that Su Qingsang was eating, she reluctantly took a bite. Unexpectedly, after the first bite, although she didn't think it was as delicious as Su Qingsang said. But this was really something she had never tasted before, and it was quite refreshing. Another thing was that eating the food that her daughter liked seemed to be a little closer to Su Qing-sang. The group of people strolled like this for the whole afternoon. In the evening, Hu Jiniao found a local specialty restaurant and took Old Master Li and the other two to try the local specialties. After shopping for the whole afternoon, Old Master Li and Li Qianqua's impression of Hu Jiniao increased a lot. It wasn't because of Hu Jiniao's status, but because with his status, it was already quite good that he could do what he did. After eating and drinking, Hu Jiniao sent the two elders back to the hotel. "Grandpa, Mom, what time will you wake up tomorrow morning? I'll arrange for someone to pick you up. Since we're going to visit the in-laws, it can't be too early or too late. Let's go to 9 o'clock. Okay, I'll ask Wen Chong to come at 8:50 in the morning." When Hu Jiniao said this, he glanced at Li Qianqua. "Wen Chong is my assistant. You should have met him. It's okay. You can arrange it." Li Qianqua was really a mother-in-law looking at her son-in-law now. The more she looked at him, the more interested she was. "Then I'll take Qing-sang home first." Okay. Su Qing-sang took her luggage and followed Hu Jiniao back home. Chapter 465. The Hua family was brightly lit. Old Master Hua, Hua Mingguang, and Lu Tongjia sat on the long U-shaped sofa in the hall. The two brothers, Hua Mingliang and Hua Yifan. What surprised him the most was that Lu Lixian was also present. Hu Jiniao glanced at Lu Lixian, then at Old Master Hua's face. "Grandpa, Qing-sang is back." Old Master Hua glanced at him and nodded in response. Su Qing-sang felt that the atmosphere was not quite right when she entered the room, but she was thinking about something else. He didn't come back for Chinese New Year, and he didn't come back for the Lantern Festival either. Although she had called Old Master Hua to wish him a happy New Year, the old man was probably still angry. "Grandpa." Su Qing-sang stepped forward and greeted the elders. The others were still fine. They all maintained each other's dignity and responded. Lu Tongjia was the only one who snorted and looked away. Su Qing-sang had long known that Lu Tongjia didn't like her. He thought for a moment, then turned to look at Hu Jiniao. Hu Jiniao took 2 steps forward and put his arm around Su Qing-sang's waist. "Mom, Qing-sang must be tired from the flight from Lin City today. I'll take her upstairs to rest first." "I'm tired." Lu Tongjia got even angrier when she saw Hu Jiniao defending Su Qing-sang like that. "How can I not be tired? They have been playing outside for an entire day. Of course I am tired." Hu Jiniao glanced at Lu Lixian. As soon as he met her gaze, he shrunk his neck and turned his face away. The corners of Hu Jiniao's lips curled up. He didn't pay any attention to his unreliable cousin who liked to fan the flames. "Grandpa, Qing-sang's flight this morning would arrive at noon. Her mother and grandfather also came, so she didn't come back immediately." Hu Jiniao didn't look at Lu Tongjia. He only said to Old Master Hua, "Qing-sang's grandfather is Li Yongfeng. He was the former chairman of the Li Group in Lin City. This time, he came with Qing-sang's mother to pay you a visit." "Visit? We can't afford it. You're already here, but you're still letting your daughter run off to play with you?" Yet, he didn't come knocking on our door. He was obviously looking down on us. How can we afford to have them visit us? Lu Tongjia didn't like Su Qing-sang. She didn't like Su Qing-sang. Once she got into a dead end, it would be hard for her to get out. "Why didn't you come as soon as you got off the plane?" "It's because there's a rule in Lin City that you can't visit your in-laws after noon. Since they can't come to the house, I'll take Qing-sang, his mother, and grandfather around in the afternoon." "Grandpa, you don't mind such a small thing. Brother Yongfeng is here?" Old Master Hua had met Old Master Li a few times before. "That's good. We can have a good gathering tomorrow." Lu said. "Up." Lu said. "Master," Tongjia said. Lu said, "I Tongjia I. Qing-sang, don't tell me you're hiding him." Lu Su he. Lu. Qing-sang he is. Li Tong. Su Tong. Lu, Tongjia yang Tongjia master, I Tongjia. Hu Jiniao turned his eyes back to Old Master Hua. "Dad, don't worry. They'll visit us tomorrow." Old Master Hua nodded. He had met Li Yongfeng once or twice and had a good impression of him. However, "But didn't you tell me before He glanced at Su Qing-sang and didn't say the rest of the words that were on the tip of his tongue. Grandpa, Hua Jinyao interrupted. Hua Jinyao interrupted Old Master Hua. If you want to know about this, I'll talk to you in the study later. Now, let Qing-sang rest. She's been tired all day. Old Master Hua was about to nod, but Lu Tongjia couldn't help it. What can't be said here? Why do we have to talk in the study? He glanced at Su Qing-sang, and the look in his eyes was quite rude. Or is there something that you can't let others know about? Everyone in the living room had different expressions on their faces. Old Master Hua didn't look happy. Lu Lixin was there, and he didn't want to embarrass Lu Tongjia in front of the younger generation. As for the others, they all looked like they were watching a good show. Hua Mingguang didn't agree with his wife's decision, but he didn't say anything. Su Qing-sang furrowed her brows slightly. Her pretty face was expressionless. She had already told Hua Jinyao about this on her way here today. She had told Hua Jinyao when she stayed in Lin City. She told him not to tell the Hua family about her identity for the time being. Su Qinghui was her biological father, but he wanted to take revenge on her biological mother and switch her identity. Su Qing-sang didn't think it was embarrassing to tell the Hua family about her identity, and it didn't matter if they found out. However, Li Qianxue had been considerate of her. She didn't care about having a father like Su Qinghui, but it wasn't something to be proud of. If people knew that even her own family had set her up, she wouldn't be able to raise her head in her husband's family. She wanted to discuss an excuse. How should she tell Hua Jinyao's family? Su Qing-sang had told Hua Jinyao about it on the way here. It was the same as what Li Qianxue said to the relatives of the Li family last time. It meant that they had been switched. As for how, who would seriously investigate what had happened back then? Mom. Hua Jinyao's expression suddenly changed because of Lu Tongjia's words. There's nothing to hide. It's just that Qing-sang is tired. I want her to go upstairs and rest. Tired? Why did you come back so late if you're tired? You didn't even come home for dinner? That's right. You only care about her parents and family now. Why would you care about us? Speaking of which, isn't she an illegitimate daughter? She was just an illegitimate daughter, but the Li family came to visit her eagerly. Visit what? Don't tell me that you want to get some benefits from this illegitimate daughter who clings to the Hua family? His words were really overbearing. Even Su Qing-sang couldn't stand it anymore, not to mention old Master Hua. Her lips moved, and she was about to refute, but Hua Jinyao pressed her hand down. Mom, are you done talking? If you are, I'll take Qing-sang upstairs. As for those shameful things, you also said that it's shameful. Naturally, we can only talk about it in a shameful place. Lu Tongjia was angry with Hua Jinyao. Her face suddenly darkened. I'm not finished. I just want to know, do you still care about this family? Do you still care about me, your mother? Chapter 466. Lu Tongjia wasn't someone who didn't know anything about the company. Speaking of which, Jinyao, you've taken care of the Li family a lot, haven't you? Why did I hear that you handed over many projects to the Li Corporation, and some of them were even within the scope of the Li Corporation's business? Her voice was soft, but her words were sharp. He stared at Su Qing-sang with no trace of politeness. Now that they've tasted it, they want to get even more benefits, so they came here eagerly. Is that so? Mrs. Hua. Su Qing-sang couldn't help but speak before Hua Jinyao could. She didn't call Lu Tongjia Mom. She knew that Lu Tongjia didn't want to acknowledge her, so she didn't force her. Sorry, I don't like it when you talk about my family like that. My mom and grandpa came to visit. It was sincere. As an in-law and an elder of mine who is already married to Hua Jinyao, it's normal for me to visit him. I don't have any ulterior motives. As for the benefits you mentioned, sorry, I don't see it either. Although the Li Corporation couldn't be compared to the Tianyu Group, it had a good reputation in Lin City over the years. What's more, a powerful dragon couldn't suppress a local snake. The Tianyu Group was indeed impressive. However, after Hua Jinyao went to Lin City, the Li family also used their advantages to provide Tianyu Group with more convenience than other companies. I don't understand why you, Mrs. Hua, are saying that we're taking advantage of Tianyu Group. Of course, you can choose not to cooperate with the Li Corporation. But I believe that in all of Lin City, You won't be able to find a more suitable partner for Tianya Group than the Lee Corporation, because our company can be said to be the most capable in the entire Lin City. Finally, I know that you don't like me. You think that I'm not good enough for him after marrying Hua Jinyao. But I am me, and my parents are my parents. I can't help it if you don't like me. But I want to tell you that my parents are the same as all parents in the world. They just want their children to live well and be happy. So, they're not as filthy as you think. He finished saying all this in one breath. He ignored the gazes of the other people in the living room. She turned to look at old Master Hua. I'm sorry, Grandpa. It's my fault that I didn't go home the first time I came back. I'll be more careful next time. I'm fine. These are all trivial matters. Looking at Su Qing-sang, old Master Hua couldn't be more satisfied. She really had the shadow of his old wife. She looked delicate and pretty, but who knew that she had a temper? He had a temper, but he wasn't impulsive. Don't be rash. His grandson had good foresight and did not misjudge him. Lu Tongjia was rendered speechless by Su Qing-sang's words. Her lips moved, and she wanted to say something, but old Master Hua interrupted her. You must be tired. Go and rest early. Let's talk about it later. Okay, Grandpa. Su Qing-sang was really tired, so she didn't stand on ceremony with him. I'll go upstairs first. He glanced at Ho Mingguang and the others and bowed slightly. Good night, Dad. Good night, Uncle. Good night, everyone. After saying this, she gracefully turned around and went upstairs. Even if the way she walked was not as elegant as the daughter of a rich family, her aura was definitely not inferior. Old Master Hua couldn't be more satisfied. He touched his chin and motioned for Hua Jinyao to go upstairs with Su Qing-sang. Wait. Lu Tongjia didn't look pleased. Not only had she been humiliated by her son, but she had also been humiliated by her daughter-in-law. How about you let this go? Hua Jinyao, stay here and make things clear. Hua Jinyao stopped and looked into Lu Tongjia's eyes. Mom, what else do you want to hear? I think Qing-sang is quite right. Hua Jinyao, you have a wife now and don't want your mother anymore, do you? Hua Jinyao looked up at her and said, I didn't mean that. If you have to think that way, there's nothing I can do. Grandpa, Hua Jinyao looked at old Master Hua and said, I'll go upstairs first. His attitude of not taking Lu Tongjia seriously made her even more dissatisfied. Before she could lose her temper, Hua Jinyao had already left. Lu Lixin saw this and said, All right, Auntie, I don't think you should be angry. I think maybe my cousin is understanding that my cousin-in-law is tired today. Don't be angry. It would have been better if he hadn't said this, but his words were obviously adding fuel to the fire. Lu Tongjia was Hua Jinyao's mother, but Hua Jinyao didn't understand her. But Su Qing-sang? All right, it's getting late. You should all go back and rest. Hearing old Master Hua's words, the others stood up. Some went home, and some went upstairs to rest. Lu Tongjia felt like she was suffocating. She couldn't get out, nor could she get out. Auntie, I'm leaving. I'll come and see you another day. Lu Lixin was infuriated. However, facing old Master Hua's penetrating gaze, he was a little scared and quickly left. Lu Tongjia felt a headache coming on. Hua Mingguang glanced at her, and in the end, she could only follow him upstairs. Upstairs, Su Qing-sang was lying on the ground as soon as she entered the room. Her luggage had already been carried upstairs. She was really tired. She thought that Hua Jinyao would stay downstairs for a long time, but he came up a few minutes later. She sat up immediately and asked, How is it? Your mother didn't scold you, did she? No, it didn't matter if she scolded him. He had been scolded many times over the years. Su Qing-sang looked at him guiltily and said, I'm sorry. I really couldn't help it. It was one thing for Lu Tongjia to scold her, but she had to drag Li Qianxue into it. Li Qianxue didn't have the intention to scold Li Qianxue in the first place. If she didn't refute Lu Tongjia's words, she wouldn't be able to hold her head high in the future. It has nothing to do with you. Hua Jinyao walked up to her and rubbed the top of her head. I think you're right. Su Qing-sang smiled. She was a little embarrassed because of Hua Jinyao's unprincipled attitude of standing on her side. Hua Jinyao, yes? Thank you. Hua Jinyao's response was to flick her forehead. Su Qing-sang shrank her head back in pain. It hurts. His hand was very strong. With just a flick, her forehead was already red, okay? Let me see. Hui Jinyao found that her forehead was really red, so he kissed it. Then he reached out and rubbed it. Don't think too much. My mother's temper is like that. If you don't like it, we can live outside. We can come back to see Grandpa on the weekends. Really? To be honest, Su Qing-sang didn't want to stay with Lu Tongjia every day. But I can for the next few days. I'll report to work in a few days. Okay. Hui Jinyao thought of something else. The first hospital of Rong City is about a 15-minute drive from our company. It's on the way. I happen to have an apartment nearby. When the time comes, I'll get someone to tidy up the apartment and we'll live there. Okay. Su Qing-sang was really touched by Hui Jinyao's words. Most men hoped that their wives would compromise in front of their mothers. Fortunately, Hui Jinyao didn't ask for that. Hui Jinyao, in fact, if possible, I'd like to get along with your mother. But the premise is that she has to be reasonable. Don't you think so? Hui Jinyao narrowed his eyes and looked at her. You become bold, haven't you? How dare you say that my mother is unreasonable? Su Qing-sang blinked her eyes innocently. Hui Jinyao suddenly reached out and scratched her armpit a few times. Su Qing-sang laughed and fell on the bed. I don't want it anymore. Her body curled up. Hui Jinyao didn't want to stop. She was afraid of tickles, so she couldn't help but want to avoid it. Hui Jinyao looked at her blushing face and couldn't help but lean on her. Su Qing-sang stopped laughing. She looked at Hui Jinyao and blushed. What are you doing? What do you think I'm doing? Hui Jinyao's eyes were deep. Honey, we've been separated for a few days. Yes, not a few days. Su Qing-sang swallowed. I haven't showered yet. Get up first. It's okay. Let's shower together. Hui Jinyao's hand reached for the hem of her clothes. We've showered together anyway. Su Qing-sang was even more embarrassed. Before the desire came, she thought of something else. Not that, right? Here. Su Qing-sang put her hands in front of his chest. Her breath was a little unstable. I'm in danger these days. Yes. Hui Jinyao put his mouth close to her ear and whispered, I specially went to buy it. Su Qing-sang blinked. You planned it, didn't you? Yes. Hui Jinyao admitted it openly. I wanted to plot against you. He sealed her mouth with a kiss so that Su Qing-sang couldn't speak. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. That night was naturally full of passion. It was a little late when Su Qing-sang got up in the morning. She hadn't had a good rest during this period of time. Li Qianxue really wanted to accompany her. The mother and daughter slept together every day. Li Qianxue always had endless questions to ask Su Qing-sang. She liked to listen to Su Qing-sang talk about her past and wanted to know more about her. As a result, Su Qing-sang went to bed very late every day but got up very early. She turned over on the bed and faintly felt that her body was uncomfortable. She gritted her teeth and frowned. That bastard Hui Jinyao didn't know how to control himself. She didn't see him in the room. Su Qing-sang looked at the time and quickly got up. In the study on the second floor, Hui Jinyao told old Master Hua about Su Qing-sang's background. He didn't have anything to hide in front of his grandfather. In fact, old Master Hua was almost a smart person. When he came to visit his in-laws, his mother and grandfather came, but his father didn't come. What would people think? Old Master Hua felt that something was wrong when he heard it yesterday. Today, he understood. I see. Chapter 467. Hui Jinyao thought of what had happened before Su Qing-sang and Li Qianxue met. For more than 20 years, she knew that her daughter was by her side, but she didn't acknowledge her. It's understandable that she was agitated. That's why I asked her to stay with her mother for a few days. Grandpa, if you want to blame someone for this, blame me. I don't blame you. Old Master Hui didn't expect such a twist. Speaking of which, since that's the reason, they still came to visit in such a hurry. The fact that they're in such a hurry to visit shows how much they value their daughter. Of course. Hui Jinyao nodded and thought of what Su Qing-sang had said yesterday. Qing-sang's mother and grandfather just acknowledged her. In fact, they were very reluctant to let her go. But they also took our family situation into consideration, so they allowed her to come back so quickly. Speaking of which, the Li family was already very considerate of Su Qingsang. They didn't come yesterday because there's a custom in Lin City that we can't visit in-laws in the afternoon. Although we don't have that custom, it shows their respect for our family and the importance they attach to this marriage. That's right. Old Master Hua nodded. Don't worry. I know about it. Hua Jinyao breathed a sigh of relief. Grandpa, in fact, Qingsang didn't want me to tell my family. Before that, she didn't want to acknowledge her mother. It was really because of a series of coincidences. The result is like this. Qingsang also thought about acknowledging Xiang Kaiping and living with her for the rest of her life. If Li Qianxue hadn't come back when we came back a few days ago, these things wouldn't have happened. Jinyao, you don't have to explain. I know what you mean. I also know that your mother is a person. In fact, she is very subjective and arbitrary most of the time. But don't worry, you don't have to take what she said to heart. Hua Jinyao nodded. He didn't take it to heart. In fact, he was afraid that Lu Tongjia would keep blaming Su Qingsang for not coming back with him for the new year. He could ignore it. After all, he had known Lu Tongjia's attitude towards him for so many years. But he didn't want Su Qingsang to be blamed by Lu Tongjia for this matter in the future. I know that you're afraid that your mother will bully Qingsang in the future. Don't worry. Your mother is just a sharp-tongued person. In fact, she can't do anything. If that day really comes, I will stop her. Grandpa, thank you. Without old Master Hua, there would be more problems in the family. All right, you brat. You don't have to be so polite with me. Old Master Hua looked at Hua Jinyao. His eyes lit up. If you really want to thank me, then I'll thank you. Give birth to a fat great-grandson with Qingsang as soon as possible. I'm very happy. Don't worry. Sooner or later. Old Master, the Li family is here. While they were talking, Uncle Zhang came upstairs and told Old Master Hua and Hua Jinyao that the Li family had arrived. Hua Jinyao and Old Master Hua didn't waste any time and quickly went downstairs. Yang Wenchang was the one who went to pick them up. After picking them up, he called Hua Jinyao. As soon as they entered the courtyard, Hua Jinyao went downstairs. Li Yongfeng had met Old Master Hua a few times many years ago. After that, the two of them developed their own careers in different places. This was the first time they had seen each other in decades. Brother Yongfeng, Old Master Hua was very friendly when he saw Old Master Li. As soon as Old Master Li and Li Qianxu entered the door, he took the initiative to greet them. I didn't expect that the two of us would have a chance to become in-laws. Isn't that so? Old Master Li was also quite emotional. When I heard that Qingsang married into your family, I said that she was a lucky girl. If you ask me, Jinyao is more lucky. Old Master Hua wasn't being polite, but in Old Master Li's eyes, it was just being polite. However, he wasn't being polite at all. I also think that Qingsang is very good. If she hadn't married Jinyao so early, I really wouldn't want to let her go so early. Old Master Hua had heard Hua Jinyao's words just now, so he naturally knew what Old Master Li meant. Ha! Of course. If I had a granddaughter as good as Qingsang, I wouldn't want her to marry too early. Is this Qingsang's mother? As Old Master Hua spoke, his eyes turned to Li Qianxue. Li Qianxue stepped forward, smiled at Old Master Hua, and reached out at the same time. Hello, Old Master Hua. I'm Li Qianxue. I've heard Dad mention you a long time ago. Today, I see that you really live up to your reputation. You're too kind. Old Master Hua led the two of them to the living room and sat down. Li Qianxue handed over the gifts she had picked before. Look, it's good that you're here. Why do you need to give me gifts? Old Master Hua asked Hua Jinyao to accept the gifts. Li Qianxue hadn't seen her daughter for a day, so she couldn't help but look around. Qingsang came back yesterday and went to bed a little late. She's still sleeping now, Hua Jinyao explained. Li Qianxue couldn't help but take another look at him. In the past, Qingsang slept late, but she didn't wake up late. He must be tired, right? Grandpa? Mom? As they spoke, Su Qingsang came downstairs. Qingsang, look at you. Li Qianxue was naturally happy to see her daughter, but she still had to say, why did you sleep so late? You're already married, so you shouldn't sleep late. I know. Mom, it's okay. Qingsang just got home yesterday. It's normal for her to sleep a little longer when she's tired. Old Master would try to smooth things over. He looked at Su Qing-sang and said in a friendly manner, Qing-sang used to be very diligent. She would wake up early every day to practice boxing with me. That's because you think too highly of her. Li Qianxue reached out to Su Qing-sang and gestured for her to sit down. Su Qing-sang was about to step forward when Hui Jinyao suddenly grabbed her hand. Mom, Qing-sang hasn't had breakfast yet. Let him have his breakfast first, then come back. You child, why didn't you say that you didn't have breakfast? Li Qianxue's heart ached. Go eat. Let's have a chat with old Master Hua. Okay. Su Qing-sang glanced at Hui Jinyao, squeezed his palm, and went to the dining room. After she left, Li Qianxue looked at old Master Hua and said, Look at this child. She's so happy to see us. She even forgot to eat. Mom, don't worry. This is an accident. I usually prepare breakfast for her. Hui Jinyao was talking about the time when the two of them lived together in Lin City. Li Qianxue also knew that Hui Jinyao would take good care of his daughter. There was nothing to worry about. Speaking of which, Qing-sang has really troubled you to take care of her. It's no trouble at all. I'm Qing-sang's husband. It's my duty to take care of her. You're her husband. It's your duty to take care of her. She's your wife. Isn't it also her duty to take care of you? A somewhat cold voice sounded, accompanied by the sound of footsteps. Lu Tongjia went downstairs and glared at Hui Jinyao. He really forgot his mother after having a wife. She had never heard him mention taking care of his parents in his life. He was willing to take care of a woman in his hands, afraid that she would be hungry and cold. As soon as she appeared, old Master Li and Li Qianxue both looked at Lu Tongjia. Her words were too rude. Li Qianxue's brows slightly furrowed, but she didn't act up immediately. That's the reason. Since Qing-sang is married to Hui Jinyao, the two of them naturally have to take care of each other. Take care of each other? Lu Tongjia sneered. I didn't see that. I saw that Hui Jinyao has always been taking care of your daughter, right? You said he wouldn't come back for the new year. What did he say he would take care of you? He said he would come back for the new year, but he didn't come back. It seems to be to accompany you. I don't understand, and now I want to ask. Is it the rule in Lin City that a married daughter is the same as if she's not married? She can do whatever she wants? Doesn't she have to worry about what her husband's family thinks? As soon as she appeared, Li Qianxue roughly guessed her identity. What she said now made Li Qianxue even more certain. You're my in-law, right? Knowing that this was her daughter's mother-in-law, Li Qianxue had a faint smile on her face. There was a bit of alienation in her smile, but it was also quite polite. That's what you're saying. But I think that even if this daughter gets married, it's still the flesh that fell from her mother's body. It doesn't make sense for her to care about what her husband's family thinks and ignore her mother's family after getting married. I think you also have a mother's family, don't you? It's not like you don't care when something happens to your mother's family. You just treat yourself as a member of the Hua family, not a daughter of your mother's family. Don't you think so? Now, I finally know who Su Qing-sang's sharp tongue resembles. As expected, like mother like daughter. Lu Tongjia had no words to refute, so she could only retort. Tongjia, old master who couldn't listen to it anymore. What are you talking about? Dad, you don't have to protect outsiders like this. I just want to ask, did I say something wrong? Did Jinyao marry Su Qing-sang because they were from a higher position? Has Jinyao been accommodating Su Qing-sang since they got married? Jinyao went so far away from Lin City to develop his career for her. Then he stayed there and didn't come back. I actually didn't know that I had married a wife and brought her into the family. Or did my son become a live-in son-in-law? Tongjia, don't talk too much. Old Master Hua saw that Li Qianxue didn't look too good, so his voice sank. She wanted Lu Tongjia to stop talking. Lu Tongjia didn't want to let it go so easily. She still wanted to speak, but Li Qianxue, who was beside her, couldn't bear to listen anymore. She had always known that Hui Jinyao was good to his daughter, but she also believed that Su Qing-sang was good to him when she didn't know it. After all, feelings were mutual. However, Lu Tongjia made it sound like everything was Su Qing-sang's fault. When she recognized Su Qing-sang, she had thought that she wouldn't let Su Qing-sang suffer. This would be even more so. Since my in-laws are so dissatisfied with my daughter, why don't you go ahead and take care of her? Why don't I bring her back and educate her properly? Chapter 468. Li Qianxue's words were very blunt. In her opinion, the Hua family was a good family, but the Li family wasn't bad either. Moreover, she really didn't like Lu Tongjia's aggressive attitude. Before she acknowledged Su Qingsang, she had thought that with Su Qingsang's background, she would probably be despised if she married into the Hua family. At that time, she was in the mood to watch a play. Now that she had acknowledged Su Qingsang as her daughter, she couldn't bear to see others despise her daughter. Not only her, but old Master Li also couldn't stand it anymore. His daughter was married to the Hua family, not sold to them. Moreover, the situation at that time was special, so it was understandable that Su Qingsang stayed. She didn't say that she didn't want to go back to Rong City on purpose. Lu Tongjia's words were really disgusting. However, old Master Li's status was different, so it was not appropriate for him to argue with the younger generation. However, Li Qianxue was different. She could retaliate. What? Are you threatening me? Lu Tongjia didn't expect such an attitude from Li Qianxue. Her face darkened. Fine. I beg, Mom. Hua Jinyao interrupted Lu Tongjia. His deep eyes stared straight at Lu Tongjia's face. Without saying anything else, he just stared at her. Lu Tongjia felt a little scared under her son's stare. However, he was unwilling to admit defeat just like that. His expression darkened. What? Am I wrong? Lu Tongjia's expression was unfriendly. I don't like a woman who only cares about her family, not her husband's family. Tongjia. Old Master Hua's face darkened. He didn't expect Lu Tongjia to be so rude to the Li family. Am I wrong? Lu Tongjia glanced at the father and daughter of the Li family. She's just an illegitimate daughter, but she makes herself seem like the daughter of a rich family. What is this? Or is it because they see our family's status and want to get close to us? Is that why you're doing this on purpose? Do you think you can scare me? Isn't it? Su Qingsang is my biological daughter. She is not an illegitimate daughter. Li Qianxue looked at Lu Tongjia and said righteously, I only found out about it recently. Back when I was in the hospital, something happened that caused my daughter to be switched. Qingsang was his biological daughter. She didn't return to Rong City immediately because she wanted to reunite with me. But in your eyes, it's just spending 2 more days with me. How did it become a heinous crime? She's your daughter? That's right. Li Qianxue nodded. Her voice was not at all polite. Qingsang is my biological daughter. As far as I am concerned, she is the best in the world. If my in-laws don't like her, then it doesn't matter. I just recognized her, and I can't wait for her to stay by my side for a while longer. Lu Tongjia sneered. She didn't believe it. In her eyes, Li Qianxue and Hua Jinyao were here because Su Qingsang had connections with the Hua family. Therefore, in order to obtain more benefits, they were willing to lower their status and recognize an illegitimate daughter as their own daughter. That's great. Anyway, it's not like no one wants our Jinyao. Take your daughters with you. Jinyao will naturally find someone better. Mom. Lu Tongjia. The last sentence was said by Hua Mingguang. No one knew when he had arrived. He looked at Lu Tongjia with disapproval. Li Qianxue couldn't take it lying down. She stood up and looked at Lu Tongjia. Is what my in-laws said true? If it's true, then we'll take Qingsang with us today. Of course, enough. Old Master Hua couldn't listen to it anymore. He glared at Lu Tongjia. Sit back down. If you don't feel comfortable here, you can go back to your room. Dad, are you kicking me out? No one is kicking you out. Old Master Hua's expression was quite unpleasant. I just want to tell you that if you really don't know how to talk, you don't have to. Lu Tongjia was so angry that her chest heaved violently. Can't I say it? He went out and told me that he was getting married. Did he ask for my permission? Did I agree? Mom. Hua Jinyao finally spoke. He looked at Lu Tongjia with a complicated look in his eyes and said in a low voice, I'm the one who's getting married, and I'm also the one who's going to spend the rest of my life with Qingsang. I don't think I need your permission to marry anyone. You've grown up, so you don't take me seriously anymore. Am I right? Tongjia. Hua Mingguang said, That's enough. Sit down. Do you want people to laugh at you? He glanced at Hua Jinyao again. Don't talk too much. He turned to old Master Hua and said, You're Uncle Li, aren't you? I've heard my father mention you. Old Master Li's attitude was a little cold. After what happened just now, both he and Li Qianxue could see that Su Qingsang might not be as good as she appeared to be in this family. In-laws, my wife is a straightforward person. Sometimes she speaks too directly. Don't take it to heart. In fact, we couldn't be more satisfied with this marriage. Don't worry, it's not like what you think. Hua Mingguang was the only one who believed what he said. No one else believed it at all. Li Qianxue was also experienced. Hearing that, she smiled faintly. It's good that you're satisfied. We're also satisfied with Jinyao. But it's also because Jinyao has been telling us how satisfied his family is with this marriage. These young people don't understand. If a marriage can't be blessed by parents and family, then two people won't necessarily be happy together. Don't you think so? Lu Tongjiao wanted to lose her temper again because of her words, but under old Master Hua's glare, she had to remain silent. But the more he did so, the more uncomfortable she felt. The more she felt suffocated. That's true. So we are very optimistic about Jinyao and Qingsong's marriage. Hua Mingguang was lying through his teeth, but no one exposed him at this time. I've talked to old Master Li before. We're going to hold a new wedding for Jinyao and Qingsang in Rong City. On one hand, it's to let our relatives recognize them, and on the other hand, it's to let everyone know Qingsong's identity. In the future, we can avoid unnecessary misunderstandings. As soon as he said this, Li Qianxue and old Master Li looked much better. After all, Su Qingsang was already married to Hua Jinyao, and the two of them seemed to have a good relationship. They didn't really want to take Su Qingsang away. That's a good idea. Speaking of which, we have some partners in Rong City, and we also have some relatives. When the time comes, we can call all of them to make it more lively. Hua Jinyao frowned. He obviously didn't accept this idea. There's no need. Su Qingsang didn't know when she came out of breakfast, but she happened to hear the last two words. She walked up to Hua Jinyao and stood still. She smiled at him and turned to face Li Qianxue. Mom, Grandpa, Dad, there's no need for a wedding. Jinyao and I are not people who pursue those external forms. We can still hold another wedding. Old Master Hua thought a little more. After all, the Hua family is a little famous in Rong City. We should let them all come and meet our eldest granddaughter-in-law. Grandpa, Su Qingsang felt tired after holding a wedding. If she had to hold another one, she would be even more tired. Thank you, Grandpa. I know you feel bad for me, but I really don't think it's necessary. If you really don't think it's appropriate, why don't you pick a time and invite all your relatives over for dinner? Introduce them, and we'll get to know each other. Then it's decided. Hua Mingguang finally made the decision. It just so happens that your great-uncle has retired and is in Rong City, and your great-aunt. Pick a time and invite everyone to dinner and get to know each other. Since you're here, stay for a few more days. I heard from Jinyao that you're staying in a hotel now. How can we do that? I think it's better to let Wenchong move your luggage over and stay directly at our house. Yes. Anyway, there are guest rooms at home. I'll have someone clean them up later. Hua Mingguang seized the opportunity and said. Old Master Li smiled. There's no need to stay here. We will also feel uncomfortable. Anyway, Qianxue has already bought a villa. It's not far from here. When we came yesterday, she already had it cleaned up. We'll move in later. Well, you're too polite. Hua Mingguang was a little helpless. If others find out, they will say that we're not good hosts. It's okay. It's not far from here. It'll be convenient for us to come and visit you. Li Qianxue would not live at the Hua family's house. She finally realized that the other members of the Hua family might seem nice, but Lu Tongjia, Su Qingsong's mother-in-law, was really not easy to get along with. She glanced at Su Qingsang. She was not liked by her mother-in-law as soon as she married into the family. She was afraid that there would be some twists and turns in the future. She only hoped that Hua Jinyao could be a little more responsible and protect her. Lu Tongjia watched the group of people discussing excitedly and sat alone on the side angrily. She felt that she could not suppress the anger in her heart. She glanced coldly at Su Qingsang, stood up, and turned to leave. Her abrupt movement attracted everyone present to look in her direction. Hu Mingguang watched Lu Tongjia leave just like that. There was some disapproval in his eyes, but it was unlikely that he would embarrass her in front of the Li family. "I'm sorry, my wife is a little short-tempered. I've made a fool of myself." "It's okay." Li Qianxue didn't pay attention to Lu Tongjia anymore. There's always a process for a daughter-in-law and mother-in-law to accept each other. You'll get better as you slowly interact with them. That's right. Hu Mingguang could only agree at this moment. Qing Sang is a good child. Jinyao's mother just hasn't come around yet. When she comes around, she will accept Qing Sang. That's good. Li Qianxue looked at Su Qing Sang. She didn't mind letting the whole family know some things at all. Qing Sang is my daughter, but I haven't been able to acknowledge her because of the wrong baby. Now that I've acknowledged her, I want to give her the best in the world. I'm worried that she's not doing well and won't tell me. So it's inevitable that I'm a little nervous. Please don't laugh at me, in-law. Chapter 469. Old Master Hu's words were a guarantee. Li Qianxue and Old Master Li were relieved. Without Lu Tongjia, the rest was much smoother. Old Master Hua and Hu Mingguang stayed at the Hu mansion for lunch. Lu Tongjia went out and didn't come back. After lunch, the father and daughter couldn't stay any longer. They refused Old Master Hu's offer to let them stay and asked Su Qing Sang to accompany them out for a walk. At this time, Rome City was almost covered in snow. That was to say, looking at the snow. Fortunately, Old Master Li and Li Qianxue didn't care what they were looking at. They only cared about who was accompanying them. They originally just wanted Su Qing Sang to spend more time with them. At this point, Su Qing Sang could still do it. After taking Su Qing Sang to see the villa they bought for her, Old Master Li and Li Qianxue stayed in the hotel for another day before moving in. It was about a 15-minute drive from the whole mansion. It could be considered to be in the same villa area. If Su Qing Sang and Hu Jinyao wanted to live here, they would be able to live a good life. Then it would be convenient for them to return to the whole mansion. Hu Jinyao had something to do with the company today, so Su Qing Sang accompanied them. Li Qianxue put away the things and took Su Qing Sang to tour the small villa. Qing Sang, you said that you don't like houses that are too big. This is not big. The 3-story villa has 3 halls and 7 rooms. There is also a living room. It's enough for you two to live here. There is a small garden in front and 2 garages in the back. I also bought you a car. Li Qianxue pointed to the back as she spoke. There are 2 cars. You can drive whichever you want. It will be more convenient for you to go to work. Mom, thank you. She was so thoughtful that Su Qing Sang didn't know what to say. Don't thank me. You just like to be polite. Li Qianxue patted her hand. I have nothing else to give you. No, you have already given me a lot. She didn't mean property. Li Qianxue gave her life and brought her into this world. Before they met, she didn't feel too sad for her. At least he had grown up safely. After reuniting with him, everything she did was from her own point of view. Su Qing Sang originally wanted to be close to Li Qianxue, but now she was even more touched. Qing Sang, Li Qianxue was actually a little worried. I observed your mother-in-law the other day. She's not easy to get along with. I'm just afraid that you'll suffer losses in the future. Mom, don't worry. My mother-in-law only looks fierce on the surface. Actually, she can't do anything to me. After all, the rest of the family is on my side. As long as Old Master Hua and Hu Jinyao were on her side, she wouldn't be afraid even if Lu Tongjia was dissatisfied with her. Li Qianxue nodded, but she was still worried. He patted Su Qing Sang's hand. That's for the best. But why do I feel that Hu Jinyao doesn't have a good relationship with his mother? It wasn't because of Su Qing Sang, but because Hu Jinyao and Lu Tongjia had never been on good terms. No matter what, Li Qianxue was someone who had been in the business world for more than 20 years. She still had a good eye for things like this. I think so. Su Qing Sang actually noticed it too. Hu Jinyao doesn't have a good relationship with his mother. It's not because of me. Didn't you ask why they don't have a good relationship? I didn't ask. Su Qing Sang wanted to ask, but Hu Jinyao obviously didn't want to talk about it, so she didn't ask. You have to ask about this kind of thing, don't you? Li Qianxue was worried, so she couldn't help but think too much. If you don't find out the reason, what if you accidentally step on the line between Hu Jinyao and his mother next time? I'm afraid Hu Jinyao will blame you, right? I don't think so. Su Qingsang was actually very curious. It's not important. I'll ask him about it later. Li Qianxue nodded and thought of something else. By the way, will you still go to work after we leave? Yes. Su Qingsang was about to tell Li Qianxue about this. Before I came here, my supervisor, Director Zhang Xiaobai, wrote a recommendation letter for me. She has also told the people at the first hospital of the city. I'm going to report for work tomorrow. Tomorrow? Li Qianxue suddenly couldn't accept it. Tomorrow? So soon? I'm just going to report for work, Su Qingsang explained lightly. As for the time of work, it has to be decided. There should be people in the department. I came here suddenly, so they have to think about how to arrange for me, right? How to arrange? I believe in your ability. Li Qianxue suddenly thought of something else. I also know a few hospital directors. If you're not used to it, you can tell me directly. I think you can go directly to the hospital opened by my friend. Mom. Su Qingsang put her hand on her forehead. Why did all of them want her to go through the back door? Don't worry. Since you believe in your daughter's ability, you will know that no matter where I am, I can do well. Li Qianxue nodded. I believe you. Let's go and find your grandfather. Okay. When Su Qingsang returned to the Hua family, she heard that the Hua family had set a dinner date for tomorrow. This time, not only would Hu Jinyao's great-uncle, Hu Yangyuan, and his children come, but also his great-aunt, Hu Yangxiu, would come with her children. When she returned to her room at night, Su Qingsang finally had time to ask Hu Jinyao about his relatives. She had almost forgotten about it after hearing it last time. Honey, are you nervous? Hu Jinyao held her body on his lap. Looking at her serious face, he couldn't help but want to laugh. Don't be silly. I'm serious. She had been with Li Qianxue for the past few days and had listened to a lot of her advice. If she had only married into an ordinary family, with a simple population and a simple environment, she wouldn't have had to do this. However, she married Hu Jinyao, and the Hua family was a large family. Not to mention that Hu Jinyao was the eldest grandson of the Hua family. Just as Li Qianxue said, she would have to bear the responsibility of her position in the future. Before that, let her start by understanding the relatives of the Hua family. I told you before, my grandfather has a biological brother and a biological sister. In fact, the old man also had some collateral relatives, such as cousins and so on. However, they were all in their hometown, so they didn't have much contact. My great-uncle, Hu Yangyuan, only had 2 sons. Now, both of his sons are high-ranking officials. Hu Yangyuan's 2 children were called Hu Mingfan and Hu Mingqi. The 2 brothers had inherited his acumen and ambition in the political arena. Now, they were developing well. Stop. Wait a minute. Speak slowly. I can't remember. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.